Chapter 2019. Fangtsuan Mountain itself had a strong concealment ability. If the cultivators of the three clans lay in ambush, they could completely catch Zi Xian off guard. It was precisely because of this consideration that Lu Yi wanted to drive Fangtsuan Mountain over. In this world, only he could do this because he was the master of Fangtsuan Mountain. Back then, he drove Fangtsuan Mountain's core all the way back from the magic blood demon pupil. Now, although the core had merged with the east, it was still not a problem to drive. However, this matter still needed the support of the human clan. Qin Xianhai nodded and said, "Since you have thought about it, then do as you wish. We will cooperate fully." On the human clan's side, Qin Xianhai had the highest prestige in the Southern Jade Clarity Tower. When he spoke, there was no doubt that he represented the entire human clan. The others would not have any objections. "Thank you, senior brother." After a while, Fangtsuan Mountain, which had been lying outside the 9 states for many years, slowly moved. Its speed became faster and faster, heading straight for the Green Lidao world. Before leaving, Lu Yi transmitted a message to Little Nine, asking it to look after the home. Little Nine naturally agreed. The 9 states could be said to be defenseless now. Except for a few dozen constellations that were left behind due to the severe injuries in the previous training, the others had all gathered at Fangtsuan Mountain. But now, the 9 states was covered by the Azura Field treasure. As long as Little Nine was there, the 9 states would not be lost. This was also the reason why Lu Yi dared to pull the battlefield outside. He had no worries about the 9 states. In the blink of an eye, Fangtsuan Mountain had arrived outside the Green Lidao world. Lu Yi saw the central warship that he brought back from the Wanxiang Sea. There seemed to be a lot of cultivators gathered there. When they met, the central warship also entered Fangtsuan Mountain, along with the cultivators who returned from the Wanxiang Sea and the cultivators from the Green Lidao world led by Wu Zhuo. The Green Lidao world's foundation had always been weak. At Yu Yao's level, only Wu Zhuo was there. The others were all constellations. Even so, after understanding the seriousness of this battle, Wu Zhuo still gathered all the constellations in the Green Lidao world to participate. This was a battle that concerned the survival of the galaxy. No one dared to let down their guard. Before Lu Yi arrived with Fangtsuan Mountain, Wu Zhuo had no confidence at all. After all, he had heard that Zi Xian was being led by the 10 Rizhou. How could Yu Kong fight against such an enemy? However, after entering Mount Innerheart, Wu Zhuo was dumbfounded. All he saw were cultivators. There were plenty of constellations, plenty of moon jade, and even more than 20 auras of sunshine. He really couldn't figure out where Lu Yi had found so many helpers. Not only were there humans, but there were also humanoids and spiritlings. There were even the flower race, wood spirit race, and spore race. He even saw the legendary mermaid clan. For a moment, he was dazzled and his horizons were broadened. The flower race and the other 2 races didn't have many people. They had always lived in the flower realm, and the flower realm was attached to the 9 regions. In this battle, the cultivators of the 3 races took the initiative to volunteer, and Lu Yi didn't refuse. Although the cultivators of the 3 races didn't have high cultivation and weren't good at fighting, whether it was the flower race, the wood spirit race, or the spore race, they were all natural-born medical cultivators. Each of them had different methods to heal others. Naturally, they would be useful in a battle of this scale. Lu Ye's orders were to stay in Mount Innerheart and wait for the cultivators on his side to return. If needed, they would help heal others. The cultivators of the 3 races immediately agreed. The allied forces of the 7 races already numbered more than 10,000. They were all at the constellation level and above. This didn't include the cultivators of Yu Kong realm. The people of Yu Kong realm hadn't arrived yet. They would need some time, but they should be able to gather here soon. There was no sign of the enemy. Lu Yi didn't wait in place. Instead, he continued to drive Mount Innerheart forward. He only stopped when he was close to the chaotic explosion zone and made arrangements. The route from the Wanxiang Sea to the 9 regions was a dead end. He Yun only knew this route. Therefore, if Zi Xian's army attacked, they would definitely be able to stop them near this position. Calculating the time, if Zi Xian's army really attacked, it shouldn't be too far away. In Mount Innerheart, The cultivators of the various races got along harmoniously. They were familiar with each other and looked for their comrades. Instead, Yen Miao of the mermaid clan found Lu Yi and had a chat with him. "You want to take a drop of blood essence from all the cultivators? Why is that?" Lu Yi looked at Yen Miao in confusion. Yen Miao, however, was mysterious. "You'll know when the time comes. However, it's definitely not a bad thing. This is a secret of our clan." Lu Yi naturally believed that Yen Miao wouldn't do anything bad with the blood essence. After being together for so many years, he still trusted Yen Miao. He immediately nodded and said, "No problem. I'll pass down the order. You just have to collect it." After giving the order, Lu Ye's side took the lead and allowed Yen Miao to take a drop of blood essence. The mermaid clan became busy. All of their clansmen were running around as if they were preparing for something. After waiting for a few more days, the cultivators of the Jade Conch tribe arrived under the leadership of Chou Wu. However, there was still no trace of Zixian's beast cultivators. This made Lu Yi wonder if He Yun was bluffing at that time. However, when he thought about it carefully, He Yun didn't need to bluff at all in the situation at that time. Moreover, Zixian's army was sent over from a long distance away. It was normal for them to be delayed by some things. Waiting around was not a solution. Lu Yi found Chen Xianhai and Su Yuan and asked them to stay behind and guard the place while he prepared to explore the chaotic explosion zone. With his current cultivation base and the help of the divine patterns, it wasn't difficult for him to hide himself. As long as he was careful, he shouldn't be discovered. Chen Xianhai and Su Yuan naturally didn't have any objections. They only reminded him to be careful. After everything was ready, Lu Yi was about to set off immediately. However, before he could set off, the musical note vibrated. He quickly picked up the musical note and looked at it. After reading the message clearly, he couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. The message was sent by a member of the humanoid clan, Ri Zhao. He was ordered by Lu Yi to monitor the situation further ahead. Just a moment ago, he made some discoveries. However, this discovery was extremely surprising to Lu Yi. Without any delay, he hurriedly left Fangsuan Mountain and flew forward. Not long after, two figures appeared in front of him. One of them was Ri Zhao from the dwarf clan who had sent the message, and the other was a charming woman. Lu Yi stood still and waited in place. After a short while, Ri Zhao and the woman arrived. Lu Yi smiled and saluted, "Senior Sister Qin." The person who came was none other than Qin Yi of the Beixian Galaxy. Beixian was a part of the Four-Way Galaxy. Other than Beixian, there were also Wu Ding, Deluo, and Jingyue galaxies. Because these four galaxies were adjacent to each other and had Ri Zhao overseeing them, they often interacted with each other. Back then, in the battle between the Four-Way Galaxy and the insect and blood races, Beixian lost a Ri Zhao called Qinzong, who was Qin Yi's Dao companion. In that battle, Lu Yi, as a constellation, killed the blood race member called Bai Jin, Ri Zhao, and avenged Qinzong. Qin Yi was very grateful for this. Before Lu Yi left the Four-Way Galaxy, she visited him in the middle of the night and gave him a token and some gifts. The gifts were some spiritual jades and a soul-type secret treasure. Although they were expensive, they weren't rare. However, the token was no small matter. With this token, Lu Yi could mobilize all Beixian cultivators on the Wanxiang Sea. Seeing the token was like seeing Qin Yi herself. This undoubtedly represented Qin Yi's gratitude to Lu Yi. Otherwise, she wouldn't have given him such a token. However, Lu Yi had never used this token. No one knew where he had put it. The past was like smoke. Who would have thought that they would meet again today? Qin Yi looked a little tired. She was a Ri Zhao, so for her to be like this meant that she didn't stop to rest at all. Moreover, she was rushing at full speed. Otherwise, she wouldn't have looked so tired. "You're really a Ri Zhao?" Qin Yi looked at Lu Yi in shock. Although she had heard about Lu Ye's recent situation from Ri Zhao, she still couldn't believe it until she saw it with her own eyes. What was Lu Ye's cultivation level when he left the Four-Way Galaxy? How long had it been since then? "I just leveled up not long ago," Lu Yi replied with a smile. Qin Yi murmured, "Unbelievable." Just like in the past, when she heard that Lu Yi had killed Ri Zhao with the body of a constellation. Although Ri Zhao was frozen in place because of the dancer, killing an enemy who was 2 realms above him was indeed shocking. Although it was hard to believe, the truth was right in front of her. Lu Ye's aura and mana waves were indeed at the level of Ri Zhao. She quickly gathered her thoughts and said, "Lu Yi, I'm here to deliver a message." Lu Yi raised his eyebrows. He had some guesses but still asked, "What's the situation?" Qi Ni said, "Jade Conch is in trouble. You have to leave quickly." Lu Yi looked up at Ri from the dwarf clan. Ri smiled. Just now, when he saw Qi Ni had said the same thing to him. Ri tried to find out the relationship between Qi Ni and Lu Yi, then sent a message to Lu Yi. "You guys talk. I'll continue to monitor," he said, then turned around and went back the way he came. "Thank you for your trouble, senior brother." Lu Yi called out to his back. "You guys seem to have some deployment?" Qi Ni frowned. She seemed to have realized something. "Although I don't know why Jade Conch has Ri Zhao, one Ri Zhao. Even with you and me, it won't be enough. Hurry up and leave. Bring everyone you can bring. If you're late, you'll be in trouble." As far as she knew, Jade Conch shouldn't have Ri Zhao. Lu Yi leveled up was fine, but the one just now was not a newly promoted Ri Zhao. He was at least in the middle stage. Hearing her rush, Lu Ye's heart warmed. Just from this point alone, his rescue of the 4-way galaxy was not in vain. Qi Ni was undoubtedly fulfilling her promise. She really saw Lu Yi as Beishuan's benefactor, which was why she rushed over to deliver the message. "What does senior sister know? Can you tell me?" Lu Yi asked. End of chapter. Chapter 2020. Seeing Lu Ye's calm demeanor, Qi Ni was extremely anxious. She glared at him angrily. "Do you know that the Zixian demonic planet wants to harm you? They're on their way and will arrive in a few days. Also, Zixian has sent 10 demon venerables this time. They're all Ri Zhao." "That's quite a lot." Lu Yi gestured with his hand. "Senior sister, please. Let's talk as we walk." Qi Ni looked at him. "Why aren't you anxious at all?" She didn't expect to meet Lu Yi this time. After all, in her opinion, Lu Yi was still in the Wanxiang Sea. There was no way he would appear in Jade Conch. She thought that after she came to report, the cultivators in Jade Conch would definitely panic. She was even prepared to personally go to the 9 Heavens realm where Lu Yi came from to help the cultivators there evacuate. Although her strength was limited, at least she had to bring Lu Ye's family out of 9 Heavens to avoid this disaster. "There's no use being anxious." Lu Yi smiled and led Qi Ni forward. "Senior sister, please tell me more." Before this, he actually thought of a possibility. Zixian's army would definitely pass through the 4 Directions galaxy on the way to attack Jade Conch. Back then, Heiyun was alone. He could still conceal himself and pass through the 4 Directions galaxy without being discovered. However, it was different this time. With 10 Ri Zhao's army passing through, it was impossible for the 4 Directions galaxy not to notice. From the standpoint of the 4 Directions galaxy, they naturally wouldn't welcome such an external force entering their territory. However, the Zixian demonic planet was too famous. Even if the 4 Directions galaxy didn't want to, they probably couldn't stop it. It could even be said that if Zixian forcefully recruited the cultivators from the 4 Directions galaxy to join their army, they wouldn't have much room to resist. They could only endure the humiliation. This was the power of a top force. Ordinary forces couldn't compete with it. If such a situation really happened, then the friendship between Jade Conch and the 4 Directions galaxy would come to an end. Even if they were forced to do so. Out of Lu Ye's expectations, Qi Ni came to report first. "I really don't know what you're thinking." Qi Ni looked at Lu Yi with disappointment. Even though he had been promoted to Sunshine, in Qi Ni's impression, he was still the same Xingqiu from back then. She vaguely felt that Lu Yi did not understand the situation, so he could only tell her everything. Just as Lu Yi expected, when the Zixian army crossed the border, the 4 Directions star system immediately noticed it, but after learning that the other party was a monster cultivator from the Zixian demon star, there was nothing they could do. His fist wasn't as big as the other parties. Even though this was his own territory, he couldn't be too forceful. Therefore, with Luo Xinghe, the realm lord of Daluo Galaxy, and Jiang Shang, the realm lord of Unbounded Galaxy, as the leaders. Several Rizhao from the 4 major galaxies gathered to meet Venerable Purple Jade to gather information. At the very least, they needed to know whether they were just passing by or targeting the 4-way star system. The process was not pleasant. Zi Xian was powerful, and unless they were from the same top forces, they would look down on anyone. The background of the 4-way galaxy was not strong, so of course, they would look down on them. Although the process was unpleasant, Luo Xinghe, Jiang Shang, and the others were relieved that Zi Xian's target was not the 4-way galaxy. However, they soon discovered a new problem because Zi Xian's target was not the 4-way galaxy, but the Jade Conch Galaxy where Lu Yi came from. This made Jiang Shang and the others nervous. For a moment, they didn't know what to do. Logically speaking, if Lu Yi hadn't turned the tide in the battle with the insect and blood races, the 4-way galaxy would have been in a terrible situation. Even if some of them were lucky enough to survive, they would have to wander the starry sky without a home. Under the Rizhao, they wouldn't be able to resist the insect and blood races of that scale. When the time came, the realm's foundation would be exhausted, and the living beings would be enslaved. Lu Yi had done the 4-way galaxy a great favor in that battle. Before Lu Yi left, they had even announced to all the cultivators that Lu Yi was the benefactor of the 4-way galaxy and would be their eternal friend. On the Wanxiang Sea, Lu Yi had taken care of the 4-way galaxy. Now that they learned that Zi Xian's target was the Jade Conch Galaxy, this news frightened everyone. They didn't know how the Jade Conch Galaxy had become enemies with Zi Xian. The Wanxiang Sea was too far away, and it was inconvenient to transmit information. A lot of information had not been sent back, but it was definitely related to some conflict on the Wanxiang Sea. Otherwise, why would a colossus like Zi Xian target a remote place like the Jade Conch Galaxy? Now, they had to decide how to deal with this matter. The 4-way galaxy didn't have the ability and confidence to make an enemy of Zi Xian. If they left it alone, it would go against their principles. After a simple discussion, they finally came to a decision. The 4-way galaxy would host a banquet in the Unbounded Realm to entertain the Zi Xian army in the name of being a good host. Qin Yi would take the opportunity to leave in advance and rush to the Jade Conch Galaxy to report the news. At the same time, she also had a mission, which was to arrive in the realm of 9 heavens as soon as possible and take away all the people related to Lu Yi. This was the only thing the 4-way galaxy could think of and do. They couldn't care about the lives of the people in the Jade Conch Galaxy, and they didn't have the ability to do so. If they meddled too much and offended Zi Xian, the 4-way galaxy would suffer. If Zi Xian could send troops to the Jade Conch Galaxy today, she could attack the 4-way galaxy another day. Therefore, the only thing they could guarantee was that Lu Ye's family and friends would be safe. This could be considered a small repayment for Lu Ye's great kindness in the past. In order to entertain the Zi Xian army, the 4-way galaxy could be said to have paid a heavy price this time. This was because only by paying enough could they attract the Zi Xian beast cultivators' interest and make them stay for a while to achieve the goal of stalling for time. We won't be able to delay them for long. In 10 days at most, the Zi Xian army will definitely attack. Qin Yi's face was full of anxiety. This time, Zi Xian has 10 demon venerables, all of whom are sunshine. They have an army of over 10,000. I've observed for a while, and among them, Yu Yao alone has nearly 100. Such a force is more than enough to sweep across the 4-way galaxy. How can the Jade Conch Galaxy stop them? Lu Yi couldn't help but nod. He finally had accurate information about the Zi Xian army. Previously, he only knew that there were 10 demon venerables, but he didn't know how many beast cultivators there were. Thanks to Qin Yi's report, he was more confident about this battle. Are you listening? Qin Yi looked at him helplessly. I'm listening. As Lu Yi spoke, he raised his hand and waved, and an invisible barrier opened. Senior sister, please come in. Qin Yi looked at the meteorite in front of her, confused for a moment. However, she could vaguely sense a strange aura from the meteorite in front of her, and immediately understood that this meteorite was probably just a disguise. She immediately flashed into it, muttering, "What the hell are you doing?" As soon as she finished speaking, her vision blurred, and a vigorous aura of a realm rushed towards her. This aura was deeper and more profound than any other realm she had encountered before. This is... Qin Yi was stunned. It was indeed as she had thought. The meteorite was just a disguise on the surface, and the truth was that it was actually a realm. A treasure that she had only heard of in legends involuntarily appeared in her mind. It was so similar to what she had just experienced. She blurted out, "What does this have to do with Mount Fengsuan?" Lu Yi smiled and said, "Senior sister has good eyesight. This is indeed Mount Fengsuan." "Impossible." Qin Yi looked at Lu Yi, as if she wanted to see if he was joking. How could the famous Mount Fengsuan be here? Moreover, he allowed her to come and go as she pleased, but she didn't see any hint of a joke on Lu Ye's face. Then, she turned her head to look in a certain direction. That direction was where the immortal spirit peak was located. Her expression was solemn, because at this moment, she could feel Ri Zhao's aura from that direction. Not one, not two, not three. Instead, there were many, many of them. "Lu Yi, there's a guest?" A gentle voice suddenly sounded. "Since it's a guest, why don't you invite her over?" Lu Yi nodded and called out to Qin Yi, "Senior sister Qin, follow me." Qin Yi followed Lu Ye's figure in a daze, flying towards the immortal spirit peak. She suspected that she had sensed wrongly, because even if this was really Mount Fengsuan, there couldn't be so many Ri Zhao gathered here. She had heard rumors about the little human tribe, and knew that Mount Fengsuan had long been divided. Every part of Mount Fengsuan only had a few Ri Zhao. Along the way, she also saw a large number of cultivators gathered together in groups. Most importantly, those cultivators all had different backgrounds. Most of them were humans, but she also saw the gorgeously dressed flower tribe, the tall wood spirit tribe, and a strange tribe with colorful mushrooms on their heads. If she wasn't wrong, they should be the spore tribe. There were also some strange tribes with human bodies and fish tails. The women were beautiful, but the men were ugly and ferocious. Could this be the legendary extinct mermaid tribe? Along the way, Qin Yi only felt that she had entered an extraordinary place. Everything she saw and heard brought a huge impact to her. Finally, she arrived at the peak of the immortal spirit peak. The moment she stepped into the main hall, Qin Yi's hair stood on end. This was because there were more than 20 gazes gathered on both sides, and each gaze seemed to be solid. In front of her, a dignified and plump woman welcomed her, smiling at her. When she met her gaze and felt her aura, Qin Yi immediately made a judgment in her heart. This woman was stronger than her, much stronger. Not only her, but more than half of the 20 people in the main hall had cultivations higher than her. Only a few of them were weaker than her, and the rest were at least on par with her. Where did so many Ri Zhao come from? Qin Yi couldn't understand. "Lu Yi, this is..." Su Yuqing said softly. Lu Yi hurriedly introduced, "This is senior sister Qin Yi from Beixian." This time, she came specially to deliver a message. He then introduced Su Yuqing to Qin Yi. Su Yuqing from the dwarf tribe, junior brother's Dao partner. "Senior sister Qin, you don't have to be so formal." Dao partner? Dwarf tribe? Qin Yi's mind was in a mess. This woman whose cultivation far surpassed hers was actually Lu Ye's Dao partner, and she was from the dwarf tribe? Was this really Fengsuan Mountain? Suppressing her thoughts, Qin Yi hurriedly greeted Su Yuqing. After a moment, Qin Yi sat down. She still felt that this was unreal, but looking at such a powerful lineup in front of her, the worries and urgency of the past few days were finally swept away. She could see that Lu Yi had already prepared for Zi Xian's attack. Otherwise, why would there be so many Ri Zhao gathered here? Facing such a lineup, Zi Xian, who was completely unaware, rushed in. That scene was pitiful just thinking about it. End of chapter. Chapter 2021. In the main hall, Lu Ye's voice continued to ring out. Everyone was listening attentively. Now that he knew the specific information about Zi Xian and the time they were about to arrive, he naturally needed to make some detailed arrangements. The most important thing in this battle was not Zi Xian's monster cultivators, but the 10 rickshaws. As long as these monster venerables were taken care of, the rest could be won. Qin Yi sat there dizzily, as if she was in a dream. She had a rough idea of what kind of background Jade's snail galaxy had, so she couldn't figure out how Lu Yi had found so many helpers, and they were all from different races. What surprised her even more was that there were many rickshaws in the main hall, and they seemed to follow Lu Ye's lead. She had also heard from the Four Directions Galaxy cultivators who had returned from the Wanxiang Sea that Lu Yi had developed very well there, but she had never expected that the star constellation back then had reached such a level. This was undoubtedly a height that she needed to look up to. After a short while, all the arrangements were in place. Qin Yi slowly came back to her senses. "Junior brother Lu, is there anything I can do? If there is, just let me know." Originally, she came here to find Lu Ye's relatives and friends and take them away to take refuge, but the current situation didn't require her to do so. However, since she was already here, she couldn't just watch. She could at least contribute. Lu Yi looked at her. "Senior Sister Qin, it's enough that you came. The Four Directions Galaxy has paid a great price to delay Zi Xian's army. I, Jade Snail, will remember this kindness. This battle is between our galaxy and Zi Xian, so the Four Directions Galaxy shouldn't interfere. After this battle, Jade Snail Galaxy would definitely become famous in the starry sky, and they would definitely hold a grudge against Zi Xian. Jade Snail now had enough power to protect itself, but it didn't mean that the Four Directions Galaxy had the same. When the time came, Zi Xian wouldn't dare to do anything to Jade Snail, but dealing with the Four Directions Galaxy wouldn't be a problem. Therefore, it was better for Qin Yi not to participate in this battle, lest she invite trouble. Qin Yi sighed. "I'm ashamed." The Four Directions Galaxy was afraid of Zi Xian's power. All they could do was delay them for a while and let Qin Yi come over. They didn't dare to fall out with Zi Xian. If they had known that the Jade Conch had such a deep foundation, the Four Cardinal Star System would have had a better choice. For example, they could have sent a group of cultivators to pretend to join Zi Xian's army. When the battle started, they would definitely have been able to catch Zi Xian off guard. But in this world, there was no such thing as early knowledge. Sunshine of the Four Directions Galaxy also had to be responsible for the cultivators in his galaxy. No matter how great Lu Ye's kindness was back then, they did not dare to offend Zi Xian before they had absolute confidence. To be able to think of ways to delay Zi Xian's army and allow Qin Yi to arrive in advance, they had also taken a considerable risk. Seeing her expression, Lu Yi could vaguely guess what she was thinking. She smiled and said, "Senior Apprentice Sister Qin, you don't have to worry about it. If Senior Apprentice Sister really can't stay idle, then please take charge of Mount Fengsuan. At that time, there will be many medical cultivators guarding this place. The cultivators who were injured during the war will also return to recuperate. Senior Apprentice Sister, please help look after them." As long as the protective barrier of Fengsuan Mountain was not broken, no one would know that Qin Yi was inside. Qin Yi obviously knew the purpose of Lu Ye's arrangement and immediately nodded. "Junior brother Lu, don't worry, I will take good care of them." Lu Yi nodded and said no more. From his point of view, the Four Directions Galaxy's response this time was understandable. Back then, the Four Directions Galaxy was indebted to him. Therefore, this time, when Jade Conch was in trouble, the Four Directions Galaxy sent Qin Yi over to bring Lu Ye's relatives and friends to escape in advance if it was within their capabilities. More than that, the Four Directions Galaxy could not do. Naturally, there would be no misunderstanding because of this. In fact, he was quite grateful because Qin Yi had taken a risk by coming over like this. After the meeting, everyone dispersed. In the remaining time, they made all kinds of preparations for the great battle. And with the accurate information brought by Qin Yi, Lu Yi naturally did not need to explore the chaotic explosion area anymore. Time passed day by day. On this day, several colossal figures suddenly appeared at the exit of the chaotic explosion zone. They were actually huge battleships. There were a total of 5 warships. 4 of them were similar to the central warships that Lu Yi had brought back from the Wanxiang Sea, but they were larger and more ferocious. Anyone who saw them could tell that they were sharp weapons for attacking cities. The last warship was particularly huge. It was a true Sunshine-level warship. Whether it was the attack or defense, it could easily be compared to a Sunshine-level warship. especially its defense, because it was supported by a powerful formation. It was not comparable to an ordinary Sunshine-level warship. Compared to this warship, the other 4 warships, which were originally not small, were not big. 1 big warship and 4 small warships, 5 warships, passed through the chaotic explosion area and really arrived at Jade Conch Galaxy. We're finally here. In the central control hall of the largest battleship in the middle, 2 figures stood side by side. One of them had a wild beard and a dignified expression, while the other had a solemn aura and a pair of pitch-black eyes, like the darkest night. There were many demon venerables on the purple Jade Demon Star, but there were only 5 who could be called Great Demon Venerables. He-Yun was one of them, and there were 4 others. These 2 were 2 of the remaining 4 Great Demon Venerables. The one with the wild beard was Demon Venerable Bai Chen. He had been famous for tens of thousands of years, and could be ranked among the top experts in the entire starry sky. The one with the dark eyes was Demon Venerable Mo Xian. Although he had only been a Great Demon Venerable for 1,000 years, his foundation was extremely deep and could not be underestimated. Especially because of his bloodline, he also cultivated an extremely powerful eye technique, which was mysterious and difficult to guard against. This time, the 2 of them were the leaders of the expedition to the 9 states, and the other 8 little demon venerables assisted them. Even the little demon venerables were Sunshine, but their cultivation had not reached the peak of the Sunshine level. 10 demon venerables, tens of thousands of demon cultivators. Zi Xian had only used such a lineup twice in 1,000 years, and each time, it was against extremely powerful forces. Under normal circumstances, a Jade Conch Galaxy was not worthy of Zi Xian's attention, but things were different when it involved the 9 states. 10,000 years ago, the 9 states was the most famous domain in the entire starry sky. It was so powerful that other top-level domains could not compare to it. It could be said that the glory of the 9 states covered the entire starry sky. However, since the Great War 10,000 years ago, the 9 states had disappeared, and no one knew where it was. Until this time, when He-Yun had definite information, Zi Xian immediately sent out a large number of troops. The main reason she brought so many demon cultivators over was to make it easier to rule the 9 states. After all, the 9 states had a huge opportunity, and many people had been looking for it in the past, but unfortunately, they had found nothing. Therefore, it was impossible to find it with fewer people. At this moment, under the activation of the power of the array beside the 2 great demon venerables, pieces of mirror-like objects presented images of their surroundings from different angles in front of them. According to the route given by He-Yun, this should be the Jade Conch Galaxy, Mo Xian said. The 9 states is not far from here. His doppelganger was lost in the 9 states last time. Bai Chen nodded slightly and said in a low voice, He-Yun's doppelganger was refined for 3,000 years, and his cultivation was at the middle stage of the Sunshine realm. According to him, he suddenly lost contact with his original body. He doesn't know what happened exactly, but the 9 states seems to be pretty good to be able to take care of a middle-stage Sunshine realm cultivator so easily. Mo Xian smiled. After all, this is the 9 states. Even after 10,000 years, there are always unexpected places. The 2 demon venerables chatted casually, but neither of them took the 9 states seriously. Even if the 9 states had a Sunshine realm cultivator, how could the 9 states resist them when they attacked with absolute strength? Is there any news from He-Yun? Bai Chen asked. Mo Xian said, not at the moment, but He-Yun said that he would go to the 10,000 Elephant Sea to take care of the 3-world island. There are many cultivators from the 9 states in that spiritual island. We will take care of it first, and then he will join us later. If there are no accidents, he should be on his way, but we don't know when he will arrive. Should we wait for him? No need. Bai Chen shook his head. Let's continue forward and find the 9 states. Mo Xian understood. Just as he was about to order the fleet to continue forward, his gaze suddenly turned, and he exclaimed in surprise, "Ah!" Bai Chen also looked in that direction. The 2 demon venerables' gazes met, and the nearby starry sky was reflected in a mirror. At this moment, a ball of blood-red light suddenly appeared in that position, and it was rushing towards the fleet at a fast speed. Blood escape technique? Emo Xian raised his eyebrows, looking surprised. It was strange for a cultivator to use the blood escape technique in such a place. Moreover, he didn't see anyone chasing after the cultivator, so Emo Xian didn't know what the cultivator was running away from. What was even more surprising was that the one who used the blood escape technique was actually Sunshine. He's coming for us. Bai Qin narrowed his eyes. Interesting. Emo Xian smiled. Zi Xian's fleet had just arrived at the Jade Snail Galaxy, and Sunshine was already rushing towards them with the blood escape technique. What was he trying to do? Normally, once a secret technique like the blood escape technique was used, it would consume a lot of energy and burden the cultivator. If it was used for too long, there would even be side effects. Therefore, it was usually used to escape or chase after enemies. While they were talking, a demon venerable from the other warship had already appeared to intercept the cultivator. The cultivator who used the blood escape technique didn't have a high cultivation level. It seemed like he had just broken through not long ago. Therefore, the demon venerable who appeared was at the middle stage of the Sunshine realm. He was one of the 8 lesser demon venerables. He had 2 antlers on his head, and he was a deer demon. He was burly and muscular. He jumped out of the warship and rushed towards the blood-red light, shouting, "Who are you?" He didn't get any response, and the blood-red light rushed towards him even faster. "You're courting death." The deer demon venerable was furious. Demon chi surged around his body, and the shadow of a giant deer flickered behind him. Then his body expanded. He was confident that his cultivation level was higher, so he rushed towards the blood-red light without fear. In that instant, the demon chi shook, and the space exploded. The blood-red light collapsed, revealing the figure behind it. End of chapter. Chapter 2022. At this moment, countless eyes looked over. After the bloody light dissipated, they could vaguely see that it was the face of a young man, but it seemed that he had been provoked by something. His expression was extremely ferocious and terrifying, and without the cover of the bloody light, this young man's body was filled with a layer of black aura, twisting and dancing on his body like a living thing. Even looking at it from afar, the black aura gave off an extremely ominous feeling, as if the blackness was the condensation of the world's filth. It would have been fine if that was all, but the key was the current state of the venerable deer monster. His cultivation was undoubtedly higher than the young man in the blood-red light, but in the collision just now, he didn't gain any advantage at all. Instead, he seemed to be at a disadvantage. His strong body tumbled in the starry sky, and it took him several breaths to stabilize himself. His face was full of surprise, obviously not expecting that he would be sent flying by an opponent whose cultivation was lower than his. It should be known that he did not hold back in the collision just now. The other monster venerables were watching from inside the warship and could not feel it clearly, but when he collided head-on with the enemy, he immediately felt that something was wrong. The other party's state was abnormal. He seemed to have lost his mind, but also did not seem to have. The venerable deer monster had cultivated for so many years, but he had never encountered such a strange thing. Crazy and calm, this extremely contradictory state was undoubtedly the most appropriate to describe the other party. At this moment, there was no time for him to think too much, because after that collision, the young man who looked a little abnormal was once again shrouded in the bloody light, and rushed straight toward the largest warship in the Purple Jade residence, looking aggressive. No one knew what he was going to do, but the venerable deer monster could not ignore it, and immediately moved to intercept him. But this moment of delay had pulled the distance between them by a large margin, and there was no way to intercept him. Fortunately, the warship was not a sitting duck. Seeing the enemy coming, a ray of light immediately erupted from the warship, and the fierceness was comparable to that of Rizhao himself. The bloody light had no choice but to retreat, but was repeatedly blocked by the power of the warship. Seeing that the venerable deer monster was approaching, the bloody light suddenly changed direction and swept toward a warship on the left. Obviously, he had no choice but to change his target. The warship that was targeted immediately counterattacked, but after all, this warship was not as powerful as the largest one, and its attack was not enough to stop the bloody light. In a moment, the bloody light was attached to the surface of the warship. At the same time, the defensive array of the warship was pushed to the limit. The light was so bright that the entire warship seemed to be covered by a bright light curtain. No one knew what the bloody light was trying to do, but being so close to Hikari was undoubtedly the best and most correct way to deal with it. Venerable Deer Monster roared angrily, wanting to chase the bloody light away. As his magic power fluctuated, a spirit pattern appeared beneath Shui Guang's feet. In the largest battleship, the two demon masters had been paying attention to the movement of the bloody light. When they saw the spiritual inscriptions, both Bai Chen and Mo Xian were stunned. Bai Chen's expression changed. Void spiritual runes. After living for so many years, he also dabbled in the Tao of spiritual tattoos. Although he had no talent in this area, his long life could make up for many shortcomings. Therefore, he could tell at a glance that this was an extremely complicated void spiritual tattoo. Not good. Mo Xian also exclaimed in a low voice. He hurriedly transmitted his voice to Venerable Deer Monster, who was rapidly approaching the bloody light. Retreat quickly. Although he did not know why Hikari suddenly constructed such a void spiritual tattoo was generally related to transmission and shifting. Almost at the same time as his voice fell, the spiritual inscriptions trembled slightly. The next moment, figures suddenly appeared beside Shui Guang. Every figure was almost the same as Shui Guang. They were shrouded in blood and their faces could not be seen clearly. However, they gave off an extremely manic feeling. There were a total of 8 bloody lights transmitted through the void spiritual tattoo. Including the first one, there were 9 of them. These 9 bloody lights were all filled with Hikari's aura and seemed to come from the same source. As soon as they appeared, they hurriedly scattered in all directions. At the same time, on a distant meteorite, Lu Yi stood quietly in place. He restrained his aura and looked in the direction of the Zixuan fleet. The 9 bloody shadows were none other than his 9 treasured blood doppelgangers. However, these 9 treasured blood doppelgangers were not the same as ordinary treasured blood doppelgangers, because each of them carried a part of the black fruit of the talent tree. Previously, in the 10,000 Elephant Sea, Lu Yi had been trying to remove the black fruit of the talent tree. After some experiments, the talent tree doppelgangers could take away half of the black fruit. However, the talent tree doppelgangers could not give up, so this method was meaningless. Then he thought of the treasured blood doppelgangers. Since the talent tree doppelgangers could divide the black fruit, there was no reason why the treasured blood doppelgangers could not. The initial attempt was not satisfactory, but with Lu Ye's efforts and persistence, he finally had results. The treasured blood in his body could absorb a part of the essence of the black fruit and carry it in it. In this way, as long as he gave up the treasured blood doppelgangers, he could remove the black fruit bit by bit. Before returning to the 9 regions, he had prepared 9 drops of treasured blood, all of which carried a part of the essence of the black fruit. At that time, he did not give up the 9 drops of treasured blood because after giving them up, he would have to condense them again, which would take time and energy. He had been preparing to make use of them at this time. After all, they were 9 treasured blood doppelgangers, which could play a big role in the right place. For example, at this moment, his initial goal was the largest battleship. This thing was too powerful, so of course, he had to get rid of it first. If he had enough time, it would not be a problem for the treasured blood doppelgangers to get close to the largest battleship, but there was a little problem with his plan. Lu Yi did not expect that after absorbing a part of the essence of the black fruit, his treasured blood doppelgangers would have some subtle changes. After these doppelgangers were condensed, they seemed to have their own thoughts and ideas. This was incredible. The treasured blood doppelgangers were condensed from his treasured blood, so they were a part of him. Logically speaking, he could easily control them, just like moving his 10 fingers. But now, the situation was that his fingers had their own thoughts, and this situation was becoming more and more obvious as time went by. Lu Yi only thought for a moment, and then he knew what was going on. The black fruit was the condensation of the 7 emotions and 6 desires of the cultivators he had devoured. When the treasured blood doppelgangers absorbed these things, it was equivalent to the thoughts of those dead cultivators being revived in his treasured blood doppelgangers. Lu Yi did not know if there would be a day when the dead Yuan Du, Gu Shi, Qin Xuanba, and the others would be revived with the help of his treasured blood doppelgangers. Probably not. After all, the dead could not be revived. Even if the treasured blood doppelgangers were revived, there was a high probability that they would only become a strange existence that only knew how to kill and destroy. The problem now was that, under the influence of the essence of the black fruit, Lu Ye's control of the treasured blood doppelgangers would weaken over time. He did not expect such a thing to happen. After all, this was the first time he had condensed a treasured blood doppelgangers that had absorbed the essence of the black fruit. There was a little deviation in the plan, but it was not a big deal. Lu Yi stared ahead and said softly, "Explode." The moment his words fell, the 9 scattered treasured blood doppelgangers emitted extremely terrifying energy fluctuations one after another. The bloody light suddenly shone brightly and quickly spread out in all directions, enveloping a large area of the starry sky. Lu Yi looked at it from afar and sighed. The 9 treasured blood doppelgangers were somewhat resistant to his orders, so they did not explode together. The damage caused was obviously reduced. If the 9 treasured blood doppelgangers could explode at the same time, the damage caused would be several times stronger. The bloody light filled the air and did not dissipate for a long time. Several figures rushed out in a sorry state, including Monster Venerable Deer. In addition to him, there were 2 other Monster Venerables. All of them were covered in dust and were obviously injured. The bloody light gradually dissipated, revealing the scene of that space. Of the 5 purple jade battleships, only 4 were left. The smaller one had been turned into countless fragments. It was the one that the treasured blood doppelgangers had attached themselves to. Of the purple jade beast cultivators in the battleship, except for the 2 monster venerables who managed to escape with their lives, the others, including Yu Yao and Xingxiu, were all dead. The self-destruction of 9 sunshine doppelgangers. Even if the power was greatly reduced due to some accidents, it was still not something that ordinary cultivators could withstand. Even if the battleship pushed its defensive power to the limit, it was still easily torn apart. When the 3 monster venerables appeared, they hurriedly approached the largest battleship on their side, panicking as if they had seen a ghost. Although the other 3 smaller battleships were not destroyed, they were more or less affected and were damaged. In the central control hall of the largest battleship, Bai Chen and Mo Xian's eyelids twitched. They had just witnessed a shocking scene with their own eyes. Even though they had lived for countless years, they still could not believe their eyes. Blood explosion technique, Bai Chen said in a deep voice. He recognized that it was the Blood Clan's blood explosion technique. It was a secret technique used by the Blood Clan to perish together with the enemy. "What's going on?" Mo Xian exclaimed. They had just arrived at the Jade Conch Galaxy. It was one thing for 9 sunshine doppelgangers to appear out of nowhere, but why did they use the blood explosion technique without saying a word? What was going on? That was sunshine, and there were 9 of them in one go. Isn't this the Jade Conch Galaxy? Isn't this the Blood Clan's headquarters? Mo Xian had a belly full of questions that he could not get an answer to. Taking a step back, even if this was really the main camp of the blood breeds, there was no other blood breeds who had the courage to make the 9 Rikashi self-destruct to intercept Zi Xian's fleet. What kind of enmity did they have? Why did they have to make such a big move? Sunshine doppelgangers were a mainstay wherever he went. Who would have such a strong foundation to send 9 sunshine doppelgangers to intercept Zi Xian's fleet? It could be said that the 9 sunshine doppelgangers' self-destruction had stunned Zi Xian's fleet. Not only Zi Xian, but even Sunshine Doppelganger, who was observing the scene from inside the Heart Mountain, was stunned. Lu Yi had said that he would take the lead, and no one had any objections. After all, this was Jade Conch Galaxy's matter. It was natural for Lu Yi to take the lead. But how did he take the lead? It was 9 sunshine doppelgangers, and they were all gone after setting off such a huge blood-colored firework. This was the first time in history. End of chapter. Chapter 2023. Inside Mount Minuscule, the Rizhao cultivators were both shocked and bewildered. They were shocked by Lu Ye's generosity, but they were also bewildered by what kind of technique was this, and what were the 9 Rizhao cultivators doing. Before this, Lu Yi had never mentioned this to them. It's our turn. Chen Xuanhai's voice interrupted everyone's thoughts. According to the plan, after Lu Yi took the lead, it would be their turn. Therefore, even though the scene just now was shocking, it didn't give them much time to think. Are you ready? Chen Xianhai turned to look at the Rizhao cultivators beside him. Su Yuan smiled and pounced toward him, instantly fusing into his body and disappearing. Without a doubt, he had used the soul race's unique soul possession technique. The other soul race cultivators pounced on their chosen targets one after another. The miniature race had sent out 11 Rizhao cultivators, and the soul race had sent out 11 as well. They had already discussed and decided on who to join forces with. 22 Rizhao cultivators were reduced to 11 in an instant. However, no matter who they were, their auras skyrocketed at this moment. Each of them focused their senses and sensed for a moment before revealing an excited expression. The miniature race had heard of the soul race's mysteries, but this was the first time they had personally experienced the great improvement brought about by the soul race's soul possession technique. In an instant, their auras were like dragons, and their killing intent was dense. Let's go! Chen Xianhai shouted and took the lead to fly into the sky. The others followed closely behind. At the same time, where the allied forces were gathered, many soul race cultivators of the lunar jade level also used soul possession techniques and pounced on their chosen targets. In the blink of an eye, not a single soul race cultivator could be seen on Mount Minuscule. The allied forces' numbers were also reduced by half. Although their numbers were reduced, their overall strength had increased. Outside Mount Minuscule, the dazzling bloody light had already receded. The attacking purple jade beast cultivators all had lingering fears, especially Venerable Stag and the other two who had just escaped. They could sense that the 9 blood race cultivators' blood explosion technique wasn't coordinated enough. Otherwise, the 3 of them might not have survived. Now that they had luckily escaped with their lives, they were all still fearful. Demon Lord, there is a large amount of sunshine aura emerging. Suddenly, a voice sounded urgently. Apparently, the detection array of the warship had detected the changes in the outside world. Demon Venerable by Chen, who was still immersed in the incident just now, hurriedly turned his head to look in a certain direction. In that direction, in the reflection of a mirror, more than 10 figures suddenly appeared and charged straight towards them. Even in the warship, he could clearly sense the powerful aura of these people, especially the leader, who even gave him, a great demon venerable, a sense of threat. His aura was panicked, and his aura was majestic. Where did all this sunlight come from? Venerable Deer, who had just escaped here, was dumbfounded. He didn't even have time to catch his breath. One had to know that He Yun had provided them with information that the Jade Conch Galaxy did not have a single sunshine. Of course, He Yun's clone had been lost here, so this information was definitely wrong. That was why they had sent 10 demon venerables here. They thought that even if there was a hidden force in the Jade Snail Galaxy, they could easily deal with it. However, as soon as they arrived, they were attacked by 9 Sunshine of the Blood Clan. Then, more than 10 Sunshine of the Blood Clan appeared out of nowhere and attacked them aggressively. This was definitely not the Jade Conch Galaxy. They must have accidentally broken into some big galaxy. There was no time to think. Seeing that the group of Sunshine was getting closer and closer, Bai Qin immediately made a decision. Meet the enemy. They couldn't let the enemy get close to their warship. The aftermath of the battle between the Sunshine was too fierce. If the enemy really got close and started fighting, their demon cultivators would definitely suffer heavy losses. Therefore, they had to stop the enemy outside. At his command, he took the lead and rushed out. The other demon venerables followed closely behind. On the other 3 warships, demon venerables appeared and quickly gathered. The 10 demon venerables gathered together, their demon chi surging. From afar, it seemed like there was a huge cloud in the starry sky. Fellow cultivators, we are from the Zishuan Demon Star. I am Bai Chen, and I happen to pass by here. Is there a misunderstanding? In Bai Chen's mind, this must be a big galaxy that they didn't know about. Moreover, the enemy's lineup was so solid that he didn't want to start a fight with them. It would be best if he could clear up the misunderstanding. As he spoke, he even mentioned the Zixuan demon star and his name. He thought that it would be more or less effective. The Zixuan demon star was an existence that couldn't be trifled with. Unexpectedly, the sunshine of the opposite side turned a deaf ear to his words. Instead, their fighting spirit was even higher. Bai Chen couldn't help but be annoyed. But things had already come to this point, and there was no way to ease the situation, especially when the enemy had already lost 9 sunshine. After a few breaths, the sunshine of the enemy and his side collided. In an instant, surging magic power surged in all directions, and pure soul power bombarded the 4 poles. The vast expanse of the starry sky suddenly distorted at this moment. Impossible! Bai Chen's eyes narrowed. The magic power that protected him showed signs of collapsing at this moment. He was a great demon venerable who had cultivated for tens of thousands of years. Even if there were people in the entire starry sky who were stronger than him, there was a limit to their strength. Moreover, the number of such strong people couldn't be more than 5. This was also the reason why he dared to lead the demon venerables to fight the enemy. It was because he had enough confidence in his own strength. But in that moment of contact, this confidence that he had maintained for tens of thousands of years was almost shattered. His opponent was a middle-aged man who held an illusory sword in his hand. In that instant of contact, he actually had a long-lost feeling that he was no match for his opponent. His opponent's magic power was more than a level higher than his own. He was already at the peak of the Sunshine Realm, and his magic power had been cultivated to the peak of the starry sky. How could there be someone stronger than him? But this kind of inconceivable thing happened so strangely. Not only him, but the other demon venerables also encountered the same thing. As a result, the 2 Rihoku groups that were originally colliding fiercely with each other were immediately divided into 2 groups the moment they collided. After a short stalemate, all the demon venerables retreated in a panic. It could be said that they retreated as fast as they could. Bai Chen's heart was in turmoil. They were the Purple Jade demon venerables, and each of them was powerful. In the process of growth, they could fight against people who were above their level. When facing cultivators who were not from the top realms and were of the same level of cultivation, they were the ones who could suppress others. They had never experienced such a ridiculous encounter. For the first time in their lives, they were suppressed by an enemy of the same level of cultivation. Moreover, these enemies' fighting style was extremely unique. Talismans were thrown out one after another as if they were worthless. Each talisman was extremely powerful. They could be turned into spells, strengthen themselves, or weaken the enemy. They were endless. Bai Chen was shocked. He finally knew where these Sunshine Realm cultivators came from. You are from the Hominid clan? In this world, only the Hominid clan cultivators fought with talismans because talismans were the foundation of their cultivation. But how could they be from the Hominid clan? Purple Jade had never had any enmity with the Hominid clan, so he could not understand why these Sunshine Realm cultivators from the Hominid clan would intercept the Purple Jade army in this place. We can't retreat. Emo Xian's voice suddenly came into his ears. Bai Chen was shocked and suddenly reacted. They left the fleet to face the enemy. Their main purpose was to prevent the aftermath of the battle between Ri Zhao and the other Yao cultivators. If they continued to retreat, there would be no point in taking the initiative to face the enemy, because they would soon retreat to the area where the 4 battleships were. They could not retreat, but the enemy was too strong. They could not suppress them, so they could only lead them. Bai Chen's divine thoughts moved, and the demon venerables immediately understood and cooperated. In the next moment, the 2 sides glided in an arc and swept obliquely upward, avoiding the Purple Jade warships behind them. Bai Chen frowned because he found that the Sunshine Realm cultivators of the Hominid clan did not seem to reject their lead. Instead, they seemed to be going with the flow. Why was that? Soon he knew the reason. It was because in the direction where the Sunshine Realm cultivators of the Hominid clan appeared, there was an army of cultivators. At first glance, there were about 6 or 7,000 of them. A group of Tiger Shark warships cleared the way, and behind the Tiger Shark warships, many cultivators gathered in groups and moved forward. Behind this army of cultivators, there was a central warship across the starry sky. On the deck, many figures were busy, but no one knew what they were doing. So that was it. Bai Chen immediately understood. No matter why the hominid clan wanted to make things difficult for them, just by looking at the situation in front of him, he knew that the enemy came prepared. This was a battle of soldiers against soldiers, and generals against generals, so the Sunshine Realm cultivators of the hominid clan did not reject their lead. In other words, it was the intention of both sides to divide the battlefield in the Sunshine Realm. The enemy had 6,000 or 7,000 hominid clan cultivators, and under the premise of losing a warship, they had at least 8,000 hominid clan cultivators. In terms of numbers, they had a slight advantage, and they still had 4 warships at their disposal. Bai Chen withdrew his gaze and no longer paid attention to them, because in his opinion, it was impossible for Purple Jade to lose the battle under the Sunshine Realm. Now they had to face the problem of how to deal with the Sunshine Realm cultivators of the hominid clan. The initial chaos had passed, and now the Sunshine Realm cultivators of both sides were fighting in pairs. Although the hominid clan had one more Sunshine Realm cultivator and had the advantage in every battle, it would still take some time to turn this advantage into a victory. On a distant meteorite, Lu Yi stood up and smiled slightly. It's our turn. The trend of the battle developed as expected. At present, soldiers were fighting soldiers and generals were fighting generals, but Purple Jade had 4 warships to rely on, which was undoubtedly unfair to the Jade Conch Coalition army. His task was very simple, which was to erase this unfairness and let his coalition army have a fair fight with the Purple Jade demonic clan cultivators. End of chapter. Chapter 2024. As he spoke, Lu Yi examined the situation of his talent tree. After the 9 treasured blood clones that carried a portion of the black fruit's essence self-destructed, he felt much more relaxed. When he looked inside himself, he could see that the black fruit was still there, but it was obviously smaller. In comparison, it was about 30% smaller. If the 9 treasured blood clones could reduce the black fruit's essence by 30%, then the 30 treasured blood clones should be able to completely remove the black fruit. This matter was not urgent for the time being. He would think about it when he had the time. After all, condensing treasured blood clones required time and energy. Gathering his thoughts, Lu Yi turned his head to the side. Come. Beside him was a huge white tiger. It was Hoopa. Beside Hoopa were a few Soul Clan cultivators led by Yi. Most of these Soul Clan cultivators had extraordinary talent. They were the accompanying spirits that Hoopa had recently taken in at the Soul Clan's ancestral land. Li Shang was one of them. To the Spiritas, it was a great honor to be valued by a sacred beast and turned into a companion spirit. This was because their cultivation efficiency would be greatly improved. Ever since Hoopa had entered the Spiritas' ancestral land, countless Spiritas had wanted to get close to him and get a chance to be turned. Unfortunately, Hoopa had no interest in them. To him, Yi was enough. Later on, Yi and Hoopa had a long talk. Only then did Hoopa reluctantly choose a few Spiritas. Li Shang was close to him, so he had undoubtedly obtained this opportunity. Now, including Yi and Li Shang, Hoopa had a total of 6 companion spirits. They were all women, and all of them had the same cultivation base as Yu Yao. The strongest one was already at the late stage Yu Yao. Of course, Yu Yao of the Spiritas were different from ordinary Yu Yao. They mainly cultivated soul power and did not have transcendence energy. However, because of this, they had some methods that other races could not imagine. For example, at this moment. As Lu Ye's voice fell, Yi and the others pounced into Hoopa's body and disappeared. Hoopa roared and charged toward Lu Yi. His body quickly turned from solid to illusory, and in an instant, he became a shadow and merged with Lu Yi. In the next moment, Lu Yi felt his foundation increase significantly. Even without activating his transcendence energy or blood essence, there was an endless stream of energy surging out of his body. I can finally be of help. Yi's voice rang out in Lu Ye's mind. Her voice was filled with joy and anticipation. She and Lu Yi had known each other for a long time and had gone through thick and thin together. They had long since considered each other as family. However, apart from the very beginning when Yi and Hoopa were able to help Lu Yi, as his strength grew, the spirit and tiger duo found it difficult to help him anymore. Back then, Yi had insisted on following Li Shang to the Spirida's ancestral land because she knew that if she didn't think of a way to change things, the distance between her and Lu Yi would only grow further and further apart. Even if their relationship didn't become estranged, that wasn't what she wanted. She didn't want Lu Yi to fight with the enemy while she could only watch from afar. Going to the Soul Race's ancestral land and cultivating the Soul Race's secret arts was her chance. Until today, the yearning and sadness of being separated for so many years finally paid off. She no longer had to watch Lu Yi struggle to kill the enemy from afar and feel powerless. She could also do her part. Li Shang's voice rang out. We're fighting side by side again. How nostalgic. This wasn't the first time she had possessed Lu Ye's soul. She had done this several times before, but at that time, she and Lu Yi had both been constellations. Now, one was Yu Yao and the other was Ri Zhao. The difference in their cultivation levels was like the difference between heaven and earth. Several other voices also rang out. Senior brother Lu, please take care of me. Of course. Lu Yi smiled. He sensed his current state. Compared to his normal state, his strength had increased by about 20%. This wasn't too great of an increase, and it was far inferior to the effects of Ri Zhao's soul possession. However, considering that this was the result of Yu Yao possessing him, it was already quite impressive. It had to be known that he was now Ri Zhao. And this special soul possession state could only be achieved through Hu Pe, the Spirida's holy beast, as a medium. The white tiger had become the Spirida's holy beast not only because it could increase the cultivation efficiency of the chosen Spiridas, but also because of this special soul possession technique. Under normal circumstances, a living being could only be possessed by one Spiritus. It was impossible for there to be a second one, because that would result in intense conflict. However, if Hu Pe was used as a medium, there wouldn't be this problem. Holy beasts had the ability to coordinate all the Spiritas under their command. They could integrate them and enhance one's body. 6 Yu Yao Spiritas and Hu Pe had increased Lu Ye's strength by 20%. This was the result of this special soul possession. Moreover, this wasn't Hu Pe's limit. According to Yi, when Hu Pe's strength increased in the future, he could transform even more Spiritas. And once Yi and the others' cultivation levels increased to Ri Zhao, when they used soul possession, the increase in strength would be unimaginable. Lu Yi even suspected that there wasn't anyone in this world who could withstand such a terrifying increase in strength. After familiarizing himself with his current state, Lu Yi said, "Let's go." As soon as he finished speaking, he turned into a ray of blood-red light and rushed toward Zi Xian's 4 battleships. At this moment, the 4 battleships were preparing to meet the enemy. Light flowed on the surface of the battleships. Clearly, they had activated their defensive power. In various positions, the arrays hummed as the power of the Dharma treasures placed in the array cores rapidly accumulated. Battleships like this took a long time to accumulate power, but once they were activated, their power was extremely strong. Not to mention the largest battleship, the power it released was equivalent to Ri Zhao personally attacking. Even the 3 smaller battleships were equivalent to Yu Yao's full-strength attack at her peak. If they were really allowed to attack, the Jade Conch Alliance would definitely suffer great losses. Unfortunately, they didn't have the chance. No one expected that Ri Zhao, who was rich, would still target their battleships when the Jade Conch Alliance had sent out 11 Ri Zhao to meet the enemy. Taking a step back, even if Bai Chen and the other demon venerables thought of this, they wouldn't be able to solve this problem because they had no time to spare. What's that? In the outermost battleship, a cultivator who was monitoring the situation outside suddenly discovered something strange in the cabin where the central array was located. He focused his attention and checked, then turned pale with fright. Oh no, Ri Zhao is attacking. Dodge! We can't. He's too fast. They were already accumulating power to launch an attack on the Jade Conch Alliance. Now that they discovered something, how could they dodge? Adjust the array. Abandon the attack and increase the defense. Yu Yao, who was overseeing the battle, hurriedly ordered. A battleship's defense was always stronger than its attack, so even if Ri Zhao attacked, the battleship might still have a chance to defend. As long as they resisted for a while, the largest purple jade battleship would be able to detect the situation here. At that time, they would be able to restrain Rizhao. Then, they could act according to the situation. In the starry sky, it wasn't unheard of for fleets to work together and kill Rizhao. Following Yu Yao's order, the battleship's accumulated power quickly dispersed. The protective film on the surface of the battleship suddenly became dazzling. It was obvious that all of its power was focused on defense. In an instant, the battleship seemed to have turned into a small sun, illuminating the vast starry sky. Under the illumination of the light, a blood-red light brazenly broke in. Although it was inconspicuous, it was a stark contrast to the dazzling light. Almost all of the purple jade cultivators on the battleship heard the clang of a long saber being unsheathed. The blood-red light rapidly expanded and turned into a blood-red color. As the blood-red and white light clashed, the sound of a saber rang out again. A huge saber suddenly appeared in the void, as if it was being grasped by an invisible hand and slowly swung down. Giant saber slash. This was an inherited saber technique from the Fong blade. It was undoubtedly a good choice to destroy a battleship. Watching from afar, the visual impact of this scene was indescribable. The huge saber seemed to be able to split heaven and earth. When it gently swung down, the bright defense of the battleship only lasted for an instant before it shattered, turning into specks of light that scattered in all directions. The huge battleship was also split into two by the saber. The saber aura swept out, and countless Yao cultivators were reduced to ashes at this moment. Whether it was Xingxiu or Yu Yao, they were no different in the face of this destructive saber. More Yao cultivators escaped from the broken battleship, each of them looking terrified and uneasy. Lu Yi had already swept past this battleship and rushed to the second one. However, before he arrived, he was shocked to find that countless Yao cultivators on the battleship had abandoned the ship and fled. Obviously, the scene just now had frightened them. Since it was not safe to hide in the battleship, who would dare to continue hiding? Of course, fleeing for their lives was the most important thing. Not only this battleship, but the other one as well. In the blink of an eye, one of the three battleships was destroyed, and the other two were completely abandoned. Only the largest battleship was left unscathed. This was a Rizhao-class battleship, and it had the capital to be proud. Even in a top realm like Purple Jade, there were only a few battleships of this level, and they had always been used only in large-scale wars. At this moment, although there was no Rizhao in the battleship, it could still exert a powerful force with its own performance. When Lu Yi was flying, the other side had already launched an attack at him. As expected, the power was indeed comparable to Rizhao's personal attack. Lu Yi displayed the vertical sweep technique, constantly approaching the battleship while dodging the other party's attack. In less than 10 breaths, he was in front of the battleship. The long saber hummed and was raised high. His vigorous qi, blood, and magic power were activated, and the huge saber blade quickly condensed. Just like before, the huge saber slashed down with the power to split the stars and slash the moon. The huge saber fell, and the battleship shook. However, this fierce attack did not break the battleship, and it did not even destroy its defense. End of chapter. Chapter 2025. One must know that even though Lu Yi had just advanced to the Sunshine Realm, his foundation was deep. His true strength was not something an ordinary Sunshine Realm cultivator could compare to. Furthermore, Hoopa had integrated the souls of the 6 spiritlings, increasing his strength by 20%. In such a state, even if there was a late-stage Sunshine Realm cultivator in front of him, Lu Yi was confident that he could fight. However, Zixian's largest warship was able to block such an attack. This undoubtedly meant that the warship's defensive strength was at the late-stage Sunshine Realm. And this was not its limit. Because it still had the strength to attack, almost at the same time as Lu Ye's giant blade slashed down, the largest warship hummed and a thick beam of light suddenly erupted from the front of the warship. In an instant, it broke through the limit of distance and attacked directly into the distance. And that direction was where the Jade Conch cultivator's allied army was located. Lu Yi suddenly turned his head and looked. His heart couldn't help but be in his throat. He was right next to the warship and could clearly feel the terrifying power contained in the beam of light. It was definitely not something a Sunshine Realm cultivator could withstand. If such an attack really landed in the midst of the Jade Conch cultivators, it would cause countless casualties in an instant. Fortunately, at this critical moment, a tall figure stood out from the bustling crowd. It was Luan Xiao. There were quite a few Sunshine cultivators on their side this time, but the Spiritling Sunshine had already been possessed by the Spiritling Sunshine and were locked in a fierce battle with the Demon Venerables. The only ones left were the three people who rushed back from the Three-World Island. Among them, Lu Ye's task was to deal with Zi Xian's warships. Yen Miao had another important task and would not directly participate in the battle this time. The last remaining Luan Xiao hid in the crowd of cultivators and attacked with the thousands of troops. Under the premise that the number of cultivators and overall strength of both sides were almost the same, with Sunshine in charge, they would naturally have the absolute advantage in the following confrontation. She didn't want to be exposed so quickly, but now she had no choice but to stand out. Under the ferocious urging of Rizhao's mana, Luan Xiao's entire body emitted a bright light. She raised her hand and a small bell-like protective magic weapon was summoned. It spun above her head, and with the surge of mana, the small bell suddenly turned into a shadow. It expanded with a loud bang and covered her entire body, as well as a large area. It happened to block the attack of the bright beam of light. In the next moment, the battleship's attack bombarded the bell shadow. The thick white light was like a white lightning bolt, containing the power to destroy the heaven and earth. In just 2 breaths, the bell shadow shattered and Luan Xiao was sent flying, blood spurting out of her body. Even though she had activated her defensive magic treasure, she was still injured by the attack. Fortunately, she was able to block the attack. Lu Yi saw this scene from afar and flew into a rage. Fortunately, there were enough sunshine on their side, and Luan Xiao was placed among the cultivators in advance. Otherwise, who knows how many people would have suffered under this attack. Sure enough, no one could predict the future in a battle of this level. There would always be accidents in the process of battle. Luan Xiao's life was not in danger. Lu Yi could sense that her aura was just a little weak. Seeing that the battleships around him were preparing to attack again, he didn't hesitate anymore. He raised his hand and grabbed the void, summoning the sword gourd. With his current strength, he had a chance to destroy this battleship, but that would take time. What they lacked the most right now was time. They might not be able to block such an attack. He could only summon the sword gourd. Channeling his magic power and spiritual sense, a sword light flew out from the mouth of the sword gourd. Following the guidance of Lu Ye's spiritual sense, it pierced towards the battleship beside him. Compared to the size of the battleship, this sword light was like an embroidery needle. However, the battleship's defense that could block his giant blade slash was as fragile as paper in front of this needle-like sword chi. The not-so-bright sword light easily broke through the battleship's defense, penetrated the battleship, and then came out the other side of the battleship. The light shattered, and the dazzling defense on the battleship's surface turned into fluorescent light dancing in the air. In an instant, it was as if a group of fireflies had appeared in the starry sky. Lu Yi raised the Panshan saber in his hand again. Channeling his magic power, an even larger blade quickly condensed and slashed down. Silently, the battleship without any protection could no longer resist this slash. It followed in the footsteps of the first battleship, breaking into 2 halves. At the same time, under the sweep of the saber light, many lives were annihilated. Even more Yao cultivators fled in fear, their faces ashen. Kill! In the starry sky ahead, the cultivators of Yu Luo shouted. Countless cultivators got into formation, gathering boundless killing intent, and swept towards the battleship like a fierce wave. The Yao cultivators were in a mess. The fleet of 5 battleships could no longer be their trump card. Moreover, the battle had started too hastily. Even the Yao cultivators were not prepared, let alone the Yao cultivators. Lu Ye's figure flashed, and the saber light swept across, killing wantonly. It could be said that the Yao cultivators were already in a disadvantageous position before the battle had even begun. On the other side, the Yao cultivators of Sunshine were in a battle. Each of the Yao cultivators was extremely sullen. This was because none of them had the upper hand in any of the 10 battles. They were all in a state of being suppressed. This was unimaginable. They were all Sunshine cultivators from the Zishuan demon planet. At the same level of cultivation, their foundation was stronger than the average Sunshine cultivator. They had always been the ones suppressing others. Since when were they the ones being suppressed? Especially Mo Xian, a great Yao cultivator. His opponent was Su Yuqing. He could feel that his opponent was also at the peak of the Sunshine realm. But she was from the Hominid clan. How could she suppress him? As everyone knew, due to the special physique of the Hominin clan and the fact that they cultivated the way of spiritual talismans, their ability to fight head-on was often slightly weaker than other clans. They relied more on the spiritual talismans that they refined themselves, so they had many means to fight, but their ability to fight head-on was not enough. Not to mention a large race like the Yao cultivators. Under normal circumstances, in a battle between Mo Xian and Su Yuqing, the latter would definitely be at a disadvantage. But now, the situation was reversed. Mo Xian could not accept this. The battle had just begun, and the situation was already like this. If this continued, wouldn't it mean that all the Yao cultivators of the Yao cultivators would be defeated? The Hominid clan. Just the Hominid clan. Mo Xian was enraged. Losing the battle made him feel like he was being humiliated for no reason. It would be fine if he lost to the Sunshine tribe, but losing to the Hominid tribe was something he could not accept. He was filled with murderous intent. He swore to himself that no matter what price he had to pay, he would kill all the Hominid clan. But at this moment, a dong sound came from somewhere in the starry sky. Sound could not be transmitted in the starry sky. Cultivators could only communicate through telepathy or mana. But this sound was extremely clear. It was transmitted into the ears of all the cultivators in the starry sky. It was transmitted into the ears of all the cultivators in the starry sky who were launching attacks or organizing defenses. And everyone could tell that it was the sound of a drum. Mo Xian did not know where the sound came from, but he did not have the time to care about it. His mind was focused on Su Yuqing. He wanted to tear this reckless Hominid clan girl into pieces and let her know the tragic fate of those who dared to oppose him. Not only Mo Xian, but the other Yao cultivators as well. Only the Hominid clan Sunshine had a thought. It's here. Near the battleship that was cut in two, Lu Yi was filled with murderous intent. He glanced at the location of Mount Fengxin. In that direction, a central battleship lay outside Mount Fengxin, maintaining a posture that could retreat into Mount Fengxin at any time. This central battleship was the one that Lu Yi brought back from the Wanxiang Sea. Its size was almost the same as the 4 smaller battleships that Zi Xian dispatched this time. They were all of the same grade. At this moment, on the deck of the battleship, several figures stood. There were not many of them, only less than 200. They were all women. Some looked no different from humans, while others had a human body and a fishtail. These were the female cultivators of the Mermaid clan. The leader was Great Elder Yan Miao. Today, she was dressed in tight-fitting clothes that outlined her graceful figure. Her long hair was tied up high, making her look valiant and formidable. There was a big drum in front of her. The big drum had a radius of 30 feet and was entirely jade-colored. Only the drum's surface was light red. There were complicated and ancient patterns on the drum's surface that crisscrossed with each other, giving off a sense of time. She held 2 drumsticks in her hands. One of them fell on the drum's surface, while the other was raised high. The sound of the drum just now was obviously from her. Behind her, there were 4 other Mermaid clan cultivators lined up in a row. They were the 3 elders of the Mermaid clan and the princess, Bai Lu. Among the higher-ups of the Mermaid clan, there was only 1 elder left to guard the territory except for the ignorant queen. The rest were all here. There were also big drums in front of the 3 elders and Bai Lu, but compared to the one in front of Yan Miao, their drums were undoubtedly much smaller. Even so, they were comparable to a table. 1 big drum and 4 small ones. There were 5 drums, all of which were extremely ancient. These 5 drums were extraordinary. Lu Yi had some understanding of them before. He knew that these 5 drums were a clan weapon that had been passed down since ancient times. They were extremely precious. As for what these 5 drums could do, Yin Miao didn't go into detail. He only told Lu Yi that there would be a pleasant surprise when the time came. Behind the 5 drums were the female cultivators of the mermaid clan. They were arranged in a semicircle on the deck. Each of them had their hands tightly clasped in front of their chests. Their heads were slightly bowed and their expressions were solemn. Boom! Yen Miao's raised drumstick fell, and a second sound rang out. Then, a third, a fourth. At first, the drum beats were sparse, but they gradually became more concentrated. After 10 beats, a bizarre scene appeared. The faint red color of the drum surface suddenly deepened, as if it was soaked in blood. Every time the drumsticks fell, it seemed as if they were smashing into a pool of blood. Ripples visible to the naked eye radiated out in all directions from the center of the 5 drums. They swept out like waves, surging tides, and even the empty starry sky became sparkling as these ripples spread out. End of chapter. Chapter 2026. The drum beats continued to sound. When the drum beats reached a certain density, the rhythm was maintained. The sparkling starry sky became increasingly illusory, as if a formless sea had really descended. All the cultivators who were fighting were enveloped by this formless sea. Lu Yi raised his eyebrows slightly because he discovered something very interesting. As the mermaid clan's drumbeats sounded, a mysterious power seemed to fall on his body out of thin air, causing his magic power to circulate more smoothly. His thoughts became clearer, and even his qi and blood surged. His strength increased quite a bit out of thin air. Although the increase was not as great as Hupo's, it was still considerable. It was about 10%. The allied army of Jade Conch cultivators had been blessed by the soul race's soul possession, causing their strength to soar. Now, the merfolk race had a similar ability as well. With the double blessing, every cultivator's strength had increased tremendously. The demon venerables could not figure out why they were no match for the little human Rizhao. They would probably be even more confused later. Compared to the soul tribe's possession technique, the mermaid clan's blessing was not as effective, but the range was large enough. How could they distinguish between friend and foe? After all, Yen Miao could not distinguish between friend and foe in such a vast area. Lu Yi suddenly remembered that Yen Miao had asked him to take a drop of blood essence from all the cultivators. At that time, he did not know what Yen Miao wanted to do, but he agreed readily and ordered the Cultivator Alliance to cooperate. Now, looking at the blood-red surface of the drum in front of Yen Miao, Lu Yi immediately understood that Yen Miao needed the cultivator's blood essence for this moment. This was the fundamental reason why the mermaid clan's secret technique could distinguish between friend and foe. The blood essence that had been taken away should have been absorbed by the drum. Only the cultivator whose blood essence had been absorbed would be able to receive the blessing of the mermaid clan's secret technique. Was this the surprise that Yen Miao mentioned? This was really a surprise. No wonder Yen Miao said that she could not directly participate in the battle. Now that she was leading the mermaid clan and using the clan artifact to cast this secret technique, it would bring her much greater benefits than if she participated in the battle alone. The drum beats continued, and the entire battlefield was enveloped by the formless sea. The demon venerables finally realized that something was wrong. Because with the drum beats, their opponents seemed to have suddenly become stronger. This was inconceivable. They were already in a state of suppression. Now that their opponents had become stronger, the suppression became even stronger. It wasn't over yet. Suddenly, an illusory singing voice accompanied by the beating of the drums resounded through the starry sky. The singing voice was wondrous, as if it was a kind of awkward chant, but no one could tell what it was. This wondrous chant didn't have much effect on the Jade Conch Cultivator Alliance. They only felt that this ethereal chant was very pleasing to the ear. However, this was not the case for Zi Xian's demonic cultivators. When the song entered their ears, it suddenly turned into a sharp sound. It was as if someone was screaming in their ears, disturbing their minds and making them anxious. Even their divine sense began to tremble. This situation was more obvious for the lower the cultivation level of the cultivator. Only demon venerables were not affected much. As for the rest of the demonic cultivators, even if they used their magic power to block their ears, it would be of no use. This was because the sound of the drum beating on their hearts could easily transmit this chant into their minds. On the deck, 5 large drums vibrated incessantly. Nearly 200 mermaids had pious expressions on their faces as they sang in unison. They didn't seem to be singing, but more like they were worshipping. The cultivators from both sides finally came into direct contact. After the demonic cultivators lost their warships, the hastily organized defense should have been of some use. After all, they had quite a number of people. Even if Lu Yi killed many of them, their numbers were still equal to that of the Jade Conch cultivators. If nothing unexpected happened, the Jade Conch cultivators would win, but they would have to pay a certain price. However, with the appearance of the mermaids, the demonic cultivators' organized defense instantly became a joke. The Soul Clan and the Mermaid Clan, the 2 major races, each had their own miraculous secret techniques to boost the strength of every Jade Conch cultivator by at least 30%. As for the demonic cultivators, they were affected by the mermaid's chant, and their strength was reduced. With this increase and decrease, the gap between the 2 sides widened. The moment they clashed, the Jade Conch alliance broke through the defenses of the Yao cultivators as easily as crushing dry weeds. The entire army of several thousand people, led by the many Yu Yao, transformed into a sharp blade that stabbed into the enemy ranks. Accompanied by the sound of the war drums, the slaughter began. Song of the Tides. The Mermaid Clan? A furious roar reverberated through the starry sky. It was none other than the most experienced and knowledgeable Bai Chen. At this moment, he was blocking Chen Xuanhai's ferocious attacks while looking in the direction of the Mermaid Clan in disbelief. Even though he had lived for tens of thousands of years, he never thought that he would be able to see the legendary Mermaid Clan again. Moreover, he had personally experienced the terrifying profundity of their secret techniques. He had read some records about the Mermaid Clan in ancient records. This race's greatest strength wasn't in battle, but in their ability to provide assistance in battle. Just like what was happening right now. There were less than 200 mermaids, but they were far more useful than their numbers. Where was this place? Why were there first the Blood Clan, then the Lesser Clan, and now even the Mermaid Clan? They were going to the Jade Conch cultivators, but they had plunged headfirst into a tiger's den. Most importantly, they didn't even know why these races were making things difficult for Zixian. Bai Chen sensed that the life force was disappearing one after another. He knew that it was the Yao cultivators who were dying. There were nearly 10,000 of them. How many of them would survive after this battle? Moreover, the Yao venerables were at an absolute disadvantage. If this continued, not only would the Yao venerables not be able to escape, but even the Yao venerables would suffer losses. Let's go! Bai Chen transmitted his voice and made a decision. Today's battle was too messy. They couldn't delay it any longer. The most important thing now was to escape. At the very least, they had to figure out which galaxy they were in. Although he was no match for Chen Xianhai, he was confident that no one on the battlefield could stop him as he was at the peak of the Sunshine Realm. He would just have to pay a price if he wanted to escape. Zixian had suffered such a great loss because she wasn't prepared. It wouldn't be too late to take revenge in the future when she was fully prepared. As soon as he finished speaking, he activated his secret technique and took Chen Xuanhai's attack head-on. His body rolled back with the help of the recoil. His qi and blood dispersed, and a wound appeared on his body. It was caused by Chen Xuanhai's talisman sword. In the next moment, his qi and blood wrapped around his body. He was about to escape. However, when he looked up, a young man appeared behind him. The young man was dressed in black and red clothes-fitting clothes. He was dressed like a weapon cultivator. There was a long saber at his waist and a gourd in his hand. He looked at Bai Chen expressionlessly. Bai Chen was stunned when he saw the young man's face. Lu Yi. He had never seen Lu Yi before. He recognized him at a glance because He Yun had shown Lu Ye's image to the Yao venerables. He Yun had long suspected that the inheritance of the Dao tree was with Lu Yi. He was afraid that the Yao venerables would kill Lu Yi by accident. Therefore, he let the Yao venerables see Lu Ye's image in advance so that they could capture him alive. Bai Chen was confused when he recognized Lu Yi. If Lu Yi is here, then isn't this Jade Conch Galaxy? But this Jade Conch Galaxy doesn't match the information provided by He Yun. Bai Chen didn't have time to think. He stretched out his hand and grabbed Lu Yi. His hand quickly enlarged and turned into a furry beast claw. It was obvious that he wanted to capture Lu Yi first. This was an opportunity for Bai Chen. He couldn't defeat Qin Xianhai, but he couldn't lose to Lu Yi. According to the information he received, Lu Yi was only Yu Yao. As long as he captured Lu Yi, Qin Xianhai would be afraid of him. He couldn't guarantee anything, but he could guarantee that the Yao venerables would escape unscathed. Lu Ye's strength had greatly increased due to his double enhancement, but he couldn't help but feel that he couldn't dodge this claw attack. After all, this was just a casual claw attack from Bai Chen before he escaped. The peak of the Sunshine Realm was indeed extraordinary. He was still far from it. But it didn't matter. He dared to stand here and stop Bai Chen because he had something to rely on. If his cultivation wasn't enough, he could make up for it with treasures. He patted the sword gourd lightly, and sword light swept out. Bai Chen's expression changed drastically. He hurriedly retracted his beast claw, and at the same time, activated his demon qi. But it was too late. The sword light pierced into his palm and flew up rapidly, piercing through his entire arm. Just as the sword light was about to reach his heart, it was finally stopped by his powerful cultivation. Bai Chen was also decisive. He raised his other hand and chopped off his broken arm. Blood spurted out from the wound. A treasure? Bai Chen's face turned pale. He didn't expect to encounter a treasure in this place. If he had known, he would have brought a treasure with him. The Zixuan demon star was rich and powerful. It wasn't as if they didn't have treasures. Lu Yi, who was not far away from him, sighed inwardly. The sword light nurtured in the sword gourd was powerful, but it consumed too quickly. He had tested it before. In order to nurture a complete sword light, it required a treasure worth about 500 million spiritual jades. Every time he used it, the sword light's power would be greatly depleted. To replenish the depleted power, he would need to spend 100 million spiritual jades. In other words, the sword light in the sword gourd could only be used 5 times before it completely disappeared. And each time, it would be weaker than the last. He had used the sword light once against Zixuan's largest warship. This was the second time. It was far weaker than the first time. And this was because he had caught Bai Chen off guard. If he hadn't used the sword gourd before, he could have killed Bai Chen directly. But it didn't matter. Just as Bai Chen was in a daze, Qin Xianhai was already standing behind him, holding the talisman sword in his hand. End of chapter. Chapter 2027. In a battle between masters, the difference between life and death was only a thin line. The appearance of the sword gourd had caught Bai Chen off guard. Qin Xianhai had found the perfect opportunity to strike while Bai Chen was in shock. The sword pierced through Bai Chen's protective demon vitality and came out of his body. Blood splattered everywhere. The physique of the demon clan was extremely strong, not to mention Bai Chen, who was at the peak of the demon clan. Even though he had lost an arm, his demon vitality, which he had cultivated for thousands of years, could not be broken by ordinary means. However, Qin Xianhai's talisman sword was not an ordinary talisman sword. It was the crystallization of his many years of cultivation. It could be said to be the best magical weapon in the world. Even so, it could not take Bai Chen's life immediately. He abruptly turned his head, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets as he raised his remaining arm and grabbed onto Qin Xianhai's wrist. His demon essence ferociously circulated and resisted Qin Xianhai's magic power, actually suppressing Qin Xianhai to the point that he was unable to move for a moment. Under the premise that demon vitality and mana were equal, Qin Xianhai's physical strength was no match for Bai Chen, who was a great demon venerable, even with the support of 2 secret techniques. "You want me to die?" Bai Chen's mouth reeked of blood. His eyes were deep and his aura was as strong as before. He did not weaken at all because of his injuries. Then you may have to die with me. At this point, he did not want to continue the battle. He wanted to live by threatening Qin Xianhai. If Qin Xianhai hesitated, he would have a chance to escape. Unfortunately, Qin Xuanhai's expression did not change at all. Instead, he looked at him with pity and sighed softly. I've long heard of the great name of Azure Night Demon Venerable. It's a pity. Bai Qin naturally knew what Qin Xianhai was feeling pity about. He glanced over and saw Lu Yi rushing over with his blade. He said coldly, he's just a new Rizhao. I'll stand here and let him kill me. What can he do? At this moment, he was fighting against Qin Xianhai, unable to move at all. He was really just a punching bag. Although he did not know how Lu Yi, who was only in the Yu Yao realm, had become a Rizhao, he was just a new Rizhao. Just like how Yu Yao could not hurt Rizhao, Bai Chen, who was at the peak of Rizhao, was confident that he could defeat a new Rizhao. Qin Xianhai could break his demon vitality because he was strong enough. Rizhao, a new Rizhao, how could he do that? Then you better stand properly. When Lu Yi heard Bai Chen's words, he responded with a faint grunt. With a few leaps, he arrived at Bai Chen's side and swung his Panshan saber down viciously. Bai Chen's eyes were filled with disdain. He was confident that Lu Yi wouldn't be able to do anything to him with his demon qi and physique. As long as he could get rid of Qin Xianhai, he would be able to escape. As for that treasure, Lu Yi had already taken it back. He knew that every time a treasure was used, it would take a long time to nurture it or cost a lot of money. After the sword light had cut through his arm, its power had been greatly reduced, so Bai Chen didn't care too much about it. The moment the blade fell, Lu Ye's right arm suddenly swelled up. Almost half of his mana and blood qi condensed in his right arm. The mountain blade became illusory in an instant, as if it had turned into an illusory blade shadow, without substance. His pure protective demonic essence was easily broken through. His flesh and blood were separated, and his head was separated from his body. Blood gushed out from his sliced neck like a fountain. His body convulsed and trembled. The huge head flew a distance away and floated beside him. Bai Chen blinked and looked at Lu Yi seriously. He opened his mouth and said, "What's the name of this blade?" Even though his head was separated from his body, he was still alive. This showed how terrifying his vitality was. Lu Yi was standing beside his body. Blood qi was rising from his right arm, and white fog was swirling around it. He turned his head and said, "Vibrating blade. I think it should be called a saw blade." As Bai Chen spoke, he looked down and stared at the Panshan saber in Lu Ye's hand. "You have a good blade." With 10,000 years of cultivation, Bai Chen's eyesight was extremely sharp. Whether it was the vibrating blade or the saw blade, it was actually just a technique. It was far from being called a blade technique. The main reason why it could explode with such terrifying power was the sharpness of the Panshan saber. If it had been any other Dharma treasure, it might not have had such an effect in the same situation. No matter how good a blade is, it depends on who is using it, Lu Yi replied calmly. Bai Chen's words were obviously unconvincing. Of course, he wouldn't spoil him. Bai Chen didn't say anything. He slowly closed his eyes. However, at this moment, his eyes suddenly opened again. A terrifying wave of soul power swept out and attacked Lu Yi. He shouted, "Wu Wang!" In an instant, the pure soul power became visible to the naked eye. It turned into a ball of twisting energy. Before it even got close, Lu Yi felt a great threat. Bai Chen's eyes flashed with a trace of satisfaction. How could he be willing to be beheaded by a newly ascended sunshine? Bai Chen's calmness was just a disguise. He chatted a little to make Lu Yi lower his guard. The real killing move was unleashed at the last moment. He didn't want to die so carelessly. Even if he died, he wanted to drag Lu Yi down with him. This was the soul-suppressing secret technique that he had painstakingly cultivated for countless years. It was the embodiment of his soul. No matter what happened to Lu Yi, his soul would be destroyed. Bai Chen thought that Lu Yi would panic, but when he looked up, Lu Yi was just standing there calmly, as if he didn't notice the danger at all. On the other hand, Qin Xuanhai's side suddenly flashed and a strange figure appeared in front of Lu Yi, raising a hand to block the soul-suppressing secret technique he had just used. Bai Chen was extremely shocked. He stared at the strange figure that suddenly appeared and vaguely felt that this person didn't seem to be made of flesh and blood. When he thought of all the things that had happened before, and the fact that Sunshine of the Hominid clan had erupted with strength far beyond his imagination, an incredible thought burst into his mind. The Soul Clan? That's right, so it's the Soul race's soul possession technique. I was wondering how Nicho of the dwarf race could be so strong. It turns out that he has the help of the Soul race. No wonder when I fought with Chen Xianhai, I was at an absolute disadvantage. In the cultivation of the Soul Dao, who could be stronger than the Soul Clan? Even if he used the soul-suppressing secret technique, it was nothing in front of the Soul Clan. Many of his doubts were answered. He wanted to send a voice transmission to inform the other demon venerables, but endless darkness came and enveloped his body and mind. His head was separated from his body. Even a demon venerable like him couldn't hold on any longer. In Sunshine's battle group, Zixian's aura was annihilated. The other demon venerables who were already panicking were even more terrified. Although they were no match for Sunshine of the Hominid clan, as long as the two demon venerables were alive, they still had hope of escaping. But now, the strongest Bai Chen was the first to fall. They were all fighting desperately in their own battles. No one knew how Bai Chen died. The only thing they knew was that they couldn't stay in this dangerous place for long. All the demon venerables were trying to break out. They were already no match for Sunshine of the Hominid clan, and the impact of Bai Chen's death made their situation even more worrisome. Especially one of the demon venerables who had been fighting against two Sunshine of the Hominid clan alone. Although it was difficult, he could still hold on. Now that he was distracted, he was severely injured. He roared angrily. If he didn't take out his demon core and put up a desperate fight, he would have followed in Bai Chen's footsteps. But once he took out his demon core, there was no turning back. It was a release of his own strength. He couldn't maintain it for long. Once he couldn't escape, he would become a fish on the chopping board. Beside Bai Chen's corpse, Lu Yi and Chen Xianhai had already disappeared. The two of them rushed in different directions, full of murderous intent. Zixian's attack, Bai Chen's death, was just the beginning. This battle was to hurt Zixian and cripple her. Only then could the world know that Jade Conch was not a soft persimmon that anyone could bully. Only then could they have enough deterrence. Chen Xianhai chose the nearest battle group. With his participation, there was no need to think about the result of that battle. When the time came, their advantage would snowball. Lu Yi went straight to Su Yuqing. He had obtained a lot of accurate information about Zixian from Qin Yi. Of course, he recognized that the one fighting against Su Yuqing was another greater demon venerable, Zixian. He seemed to be called Emo Xian. When Lu Yi arrived, Emo Xian was struggling to deal with Su Yuqing's attacks. Su Yuqing's fighting style wasn't as imposing as Chen Xuanhai's. It was more like flowing water. She used all kinds of spiritual talismans and never faced Emo Xian head-on. However, it was this style that made Emo Xian feel so uncomfortable that he almost vomited blood. If Su Yuqing's strength was not as strong as his, he could totally defeat her fighting style with brute force. This was what demon cultivators were best at. But with the double support of the Soul Clan and the Mermaid Clan, Su Yuqing's strength was much stronger than Emo Xian's. This gave Emo Xian the feeling that his opponent was slowly teasing him. He repeatedly wanted to sacrifice his demon core and fight to the death, but he couldn't bear to do so. It was only when Bai Chen's aura suddenly disappeared that he was shocked. He knew that if he hesitated any longer, he might not even have the chance to escape. With a thought, he immediately sacrificed his demon core. Su Yuqing, of course, knew the pros and cons. She scattered spiritual talismans to form a defense. However, under the fierce attack of Emo Xian's demon core, these defenses didn't have much effect. Once her technique was broken through, Emo Xian could attack and kill, or he could escape from her entanglement and escape. There would be many choices for him to choose from. This was definitely not what Su Yuqing wanted to see. A trace of determination flashed across her brows. She gently opened her red lips. The demon clan had demon cores, but she also had her own inner core. Although they were not the same thing, They were similar in nature. However, just as she was about to sacrifice her inner core, Su Yuqing suddenly saw Lu Ye's figure rushing over. At the same time, Lu Ye's voice sounded in her ears. "Leave it to me." Su Yuqing immediately shut her mouth. She calmed down and threw out a spiritual talisman to protect herself. Lu Ye's sudden intrusion made Mo Xian extremely vigilant. He scanned with his divine perception and found that the intruder was only at the early sunshine stage. He was relieved. End of chapter. Chapter 2028. When Mo Xian and Su Yuqing were at the pinnacle of sunshine, ordinary sunshine cultivators would not be able to interfere. Therefore, Mo Xian did not pay much attention to Lu Ye's arrival. He did not even see Lu Ye's appearance clearly. This demon venerable was destined to pay the price for his arrogance. If he knew that Lu Yi was directly related to Bai Chen's death, he would not have underestimated Lu Yi. At this moment, he was still activating his Yao Dan until he heard the sound of a sword. Mo Xian's skin tightened. When he turned his head, a sword light was already not far away from him. He sensed that the power was not strong, but it was definitely not weak either. This was Lu Ye's third time activating the sword light from the sword gourd. The first time, it easily broke through the defense of a Sunshine-class warship. The second time, it destroyed one of Bai Chen's arms. According to Lu Ye's own exploration and understanding of the sword light from the sword gourd, as long as the sword light was not damaged, it could explode with power that ordinary Sunshine-class cultivators could not resist. If he had used the sword gourd against Bai Chen the first time, he should have been able to kill him. The second time, the sword light was weaker than the first, but even a strong cultivator like Bai Chen could not completely block it. As for the third time, there was a chance to hurt Mo Xian, but as for killing him, there was not much hope. The key was to see how Mo Xian would deal with it. If he was careless, he would be facing the combined attack of Lu Yi and Su Yuqing. Mo Xian was not careless. In other words, he did not have the right to be careless at this moment. Even if the sword light was weakened twice, Mo Xian did not have the ability to block it. This was because after using his Yao Dan, his strength was greatly reduced, and most of his strength was concentrated on his Yao Dan. Therefore, in the face of this incoming sword light, he did not hesitate to call back his Yao Dan. He did not even have time to put it back into his body. He directly activated his Yao Dan to meet the sword light. The moment they collided, a violent force was released. Mo Xian groaned, and the sword light dimmed a lot. Lu Yi called it back into the sword gourd. Looking up, Mo Xian's face flashed with an abnormal flush. There was no doubt that his Yao Dan was damaged in the collision just now. Mo Xian was furious. Although he was at a disadvantage in the battle with Su Yuqing, he was not seriously injured. Who knew that Lu Yi would make him suffer a loss? How could he tolerate this? Moreover, Su Yuqing was already charging in from the side. At this moment, his Yao core was shaking, and his Yao Yuan was unstable. If Su Yuqing and Lu Yi joined forces, he would be in a dire situation. He had to deal with this early-stage sunshine guy first so that he could deal with Su Yuqing in peace. Suddenly, he raised his head and looked at Lu Yi, a mysterious aura surging from his body as he shouted, "Heaven and Earth Inc." As his voice fell, Lu Yi discovered to his astonishment that boundless black color was gushing out from his ink-black eyes, dyeing the starry sky. In the blink of an eye, the surroundings were plunged into darkness. There was no light at all. Not only that, but Lu Yi couldn't even sense his own existence. It was as if his 5 senses had been stripped away in this boundless darkness. All that was left of him was a mass of consciousness floating in the darkness, alone and without a shore, never to see the light of day. What kind of secret technique was this? No, this was not a secret technique, this was an eye technique. Lu Yi suddenly recalled the scene before the unforeseen event and immediately reacted. What he saw was not the truth. In other words, that boundless black color did not surge out from Mo Xian's eyes. It was just his own misconception. The real situation was not what he saw. Eye technique, Lu Ye's mind settled. It just so happened that he also had a similar method. Exhaling softly, he closed his eyes. When his eyes opened, Countless mysterious lines were outlined in his eyes and quickly formed. At the same time, magic power and soul power surged. "Blood moon, in the sky!" Lu Yi shouted. In the world shrouded in darkness, a blood moon suddenly rose into the sky. The crimson color seemed to be made of fresh blood, and blood dripped down from it. It looked extremely terrifying. More importantly, this blood moon looked like a huge eye, shining in the sky and overlooking all living things. The black and crimson light collided violently, a silent contest between two eye techniques. A short moment later, a crisp sound rang out. The boundless darkness shattered, and the distant world returned once again. Lu Yi looked up and saw Emo Xian pouncing towards him. At this moment, this guy was less than 100 feet away from him. For a peak Sunshine Realm cultivator, this distance was like face-to-face contact. Emo Xian's large hand had already reached out. His fingernails were sharp and cold. He also saw Su Yuqing's anxious and panicked face behind Emo Xian. She was rushing towards Emo Xian, obviously trying to stop Emo Xian before he was in danger. But judging from the distance between them, she probably wouldn't make it in time. Lu Yi broke out in cold sweat. He felt like he was about to collapse. In that instant, he had poured almost all of his power into the Blood Moon Spirit Rune. Although this spiritual pattern came from the Blood Ancestor and was unfathomable, his cultivation was far inferior to Emo Xian's. Therefore, he didn't dare to hold back in order to resist Emo Xian's eye technique. Fortunately, the effect was very obvious. The Blood Moon spiritual pattern that he used all of his energy to cast was indeed not something that Emo Xian's eye technique could resist. At that moment, when his eye technique was broken, Emo Xian obviously suffered a backlash and was affected by the Blood Moon spiritual pattern. Back then, when Lu Yi challenged the illusory blood magic eye, he had personally experienced the terror of the illusory blood magic eye's blink. It was a space wonder that Sunshine Realm cultivators couldn't enter. The main reason was that the illusory blood magic eye's blink came from the blood moon in the core of Mount Fengzun. After all, the Blood Moon spiritual pattern came from the blood ancestor's inheritance. Emo Xian's eye technique couldn't compare at all. Emo Xian closed the distance of 100 feet in an instant. He was still in his attacking posture, but he seemed to have lost his mind. His body was stiff, and his demonic eyes were imprinted with crimson light, as if the blood moon was reflected in them. Lu Yi pulled out his saber and stabbed it straight at Emo Xian's chest. He originally wanted to build the Divine Blade spiritual pattern to strengthen himself, but he realized that there wasn't a single drop of spiritual power left in his body. In that short period of time, he had used up all his spiritual power. The stab was soft and powerless. Although the Pan Mountain saber was sharp enough to pierce into Emo Xian's body, it only went 3 inches into his flesh. It wasn't a serious injury at all. This was all thanks to Emo Xian being trapped in the eye technique and not activating his protective demonic qi. If he had, Lu Yi's attack wouldn't even have been able to pierce through his skin. The slightly stiff Emo Xian suddenly trembled slightly. His turbid eyes showed signs of recovering, and the crimson color began to dissipate. After all, he was at the peak of the Sunshine Realm. Although he was trapped in the eye technique due to the backlash, it wouldn't last long. After being stimulated by the pain, he would wake up immediately. "Yuqing!" Lu Yi shouted. After knowing each other for so many years, they had a tacit understanding of each other. It could be said that they had long reached the level where Lu Yi could casually pat Su Yuqing and she would flip over. Su Yuqing knew what Lu Yi's intention was when he shouted. She instantly pounced behind Emo Xian and ruthlessly struck out with her palm. Emo Xian threw himself into Lu Yi's arms, and the long saber pierced through his body. The intense pain finally allowed Emo Xian to escape from the eye technique's backlash. His dark eyes quickly regained clarity, but it was too late. Lu Yi kicked out and sent him flying. Su Yuqing grabbed him and quickly ran away. In the distance, Emo Xian lowered his head and looked at his chest. He couldn't believe that he had suffered such a serious injury. If it was just a simple stab wound, it wouldn't be too serious for him, even if the wound was on his chest, but at this moment he could clearly feel that there was an extremely strange power lingering around the wound, hindering his recovery. Even with his peak Sunshine Realm strength, he couldn't dispel it in a short time. As Lu Yi had reached the Sunshine Realm, the quality of the Pan Mountain Saber had also improved. The power of brightness had become even more difficult to deal with. This strange power was like a maggot in one's bones, constantly hindering his recovery and tearing his body apart. In other words, if he didn't get rid of the power of brightness as soon as possible, his injuries would only worsen. "How dare you hurt me? I want you dead." Emo Xian raised his head and glared at Lu Yi. It was fine that he couldn't defeat Su Yuqing. She was also a peak Sunshine Realm cultivator and had the qualifications to be on equal footing with him. But now, even an early Sunshine Realm cultivator dared to hurt him. Emo Xian glared at Lu Yi fiercely, as if he was going to pounce on Lu Yi in the next moment. But to everyone's astonishment, not only did he not pounce on Lu Yi, he actually turned around and ran away after shouting those words. How could an expert like him lose his mind because of a momentary loss? Now that Bai Chen was dead, the other beast venerables couldn't escape, and the tens of thousands of beast venerables had suffered heavy casualties. If he didn't leave now, he wouldn't have another chance. Only by surviving can I have a chance to take revenge. This was what he had been working hard for. Unfortunately, he hadn't found a chance to do so. He didn't expect that the opportunity would come so soon. Looking at the direction he fled in, both Lu Yi and Su Yuqing had no intention of chasing after him. They just watched quietly. "Explode!" Su Yuqing suddenly said softly. Emo Xian, who had already fled far away, suddenly stopped. His eyes were filled with extreme fear. He lowered his head and looked at his chest. At this moment, he felt an extremely terrifying aura erupting from within his body. He raised his hand and stabbed it into his chest, grabbing a burning sensation. It's a talisman. And there's more than one. When did this happen? Emo Xian's eyes were filled with despair. He finally understood why no one chased after him. It was because there was no need to. If it was any other time, he would be able to detect any abnormalities in his body easily. As a peak Sunshine Realm cultivator, he naturally knew his body like the back of his hand. But in this battle, he was injured by the Fang Blade. The power of the Fang Blade was so strange that he didn't notice that Su Yuqing had placed a few powerful talismans in his body. A violent tremor spread out. A huge ball of fire instantly bloomed where Emo Xian was. The strong vitality was completely destroyed at this moment. End of chapter. Chapter 2029. Two demon venerables had died in battle. And both of them had died with grievances. Lu Yi quietly looked at the ball of fire that was quickly fading. Compared to the blood-colored fireworks that he had released with the 9 blood clones, Mo Xian's firework was not inferior. "Are you all right?" Su Yuqing looked at him with concern. Lu Ye's breath was a little weak, which was undoubtedly because he had consumed too much energy. "I'm fine. Go help them." Lu Yi patted the back of her hand. Su Yuqing nodded, turned around, and rushed to the nearest battle. Lu Yi directly sat down and took out a large number of spiritual jades from his storage ring. He urged the power of the talent tree to devour them and restore himself. In this battle, he first took the lead by detonating the 9 blood clones. Then, he destroyed the remaining 4 battleships of Zixian. Then, he cooperated with Chen Xianhai to kill Bai Chen and helped Su Yuqing to kill Emo Xian. It could be said that he had paid a huge price and contributed a lot. He should not need to do anything else after this. He just needed to rest in peace. In terms of strength, Zixian had fallen into an absolute disadvantage. Under the premise that 2 demon venerables had died in battle, there was no chance for them to make a comeback. When he recovered, he had the time to investigate the battlefield where the Jade Conch Coalition army was. From his observation, the battlefield here was completely one-sided. If Zixian's army had battleships to support them, it might be difficult for the Jade Conch Coalition army to defeat them, especially the Sunshine-class battleship. It was not something that the cultivators of the Jade Conch Coalition army could contend against. However, after the battleship was destroyed, Zixian's cultivators could only abandon the ship and fight. There was not much difference in the number of both sides. Zixian's cultivators had more, but not by much. Even the number of cultivators on Yu Yao's level was equal. If there was no external interference, such a battle would most likely be a situation where both sides were evenly matched. However, the Jade Conch Coalition army was enchanted by the Soul Clan and supported by the Mermaid Clan's secret technique. Each of them could erupt with strength that was far beyond their normal level. On the other hand, the Song of the Tides constantly disturbed the minds of Zixian's cultivators, causing them to be distracted. Under this situation, the gap between them directly widened. As the two armies clashed, Yuluo's side had a strict formation, advancing and retreating with a sense of propriety. On the other hand, Zixian's demonic cultivators were in a state of chaos. After their initial defense line was broken through, they no longer had the strength to resist. The battle had only been going on for a short while, but by the time Lu Yuang arrived, Zixian's demonic cultivators had already lost more than 30% of their forces. The Jade Conch Alliance army was divided into several groups, and they roamed around the huge battlefield like huge dragons, constantly nibbling away at Zixian's forces. Some of the Purple Jade demonic cultivators had already begun to flee upon seeing that the situation was unfavorable, and this phenomenon was becoming more and more intense with the passage of time. However, under such circumstances, even if they wanted to flee, they still had to ask for permission from the Jade Conch Alliance. The outcome had been decided. Lu Yi retracted his gaze, no longer paying attention. On the battlefield under the sun, Zixuan's troops were defeated like a landslide. Similarly, the situation under the sun wasn't any better. Originally, the death of Bai Chen and Mo Xian had shocked many demon venerables. With Chen Xianhai and Su Yuqing's help, the situation that the demon venerables had worked so hard to maintain collapsed instantly. One by one, the auras of the sun were annihilated. In less than an hour, 6 of the 8 little demon venerables had fallen. Only 2 were still fighting like caged beasts. Under such circumstances, even if they wanted to escape, they had no chance. They obviously knew this, so they all looked defeated, and their eyes were filled with despair. Originally, they thought that there wouldn't be any accidents in this expedition, because Zixian had participated in such battles many times, and there had never been a precedent of failure. Victory after victory had forged Zixian's supreme prestige. No one could have imagined that Zixian would actually suffer such a great loss in this remote corner of the starry sky, suffering such great losses. This was something that hadn't happened for tens of thousands of years. After a few more breaths, accompanied by a scream, one of the 2 remaining little demon venerables died in battle. The last one saw that there was no hope of escaping, so he directly took out his demon core and exploded it with a resolute expression. He undoubtedly wanted to drag someone down with him, but unfortunately his strength was limited. Even if he exploded his demon core, he didn't succeed. Perhaps it was a coincidence, but the one who was still alive was the dear demon venerable who had first appeared and fought with Lu Ye's precious blood clone. His strength was at the bottom of all the attacking demon venerables, and he was only at the middle stage of the Sunshine Realm. However, he was the luckiest and survived until the end. After the demon core exploded, the dear demon venerable's aura fell to the point where it was about to die. After all, the demon core was the essence of his life's cultivation. After exploding it, it was equivalent to destroying his cultivation. Although his physical strength was still at the middle stage of the Sunshine Realm, it was no longer considered Sunshine Realm. Moreover, with such a great injury, he wouldn't be able to live for long unless he was treated in time. Looking at the dear demon venerable, Wuchima sighed, "Why do you have to do this? We originally planned to leave one of the demon venerables alive and let him report back to Zixian. You are too stubborn." The dear demon venerable's face, which was extremely pale because of the explosion of his demon core, suddenly became incomparably shocked. He stared at Wu Qimo with wide eyes, filled with anger, and regret. If he had known that the humans had such a plan, why would he have exploded his demon core? It was better to live than to die. It was precisely because he felt that there was no hope of escaping that he decided to risk it all. The corner of his mouth twitched, as if he wanted to ask something, but he couldn't open his mouth. Wu Qimo understood what he meant. He nodded and sighed, "I didn't lie to you. That was our original plan. After all, the result of this battle needs to be announced by someone. Otherwise, this battle would be meaningless. Lu Ye's original plan was to beat Zixian until she was crippled and spread the name of Jade Conch. This was not the Wanxiang Sea, and there was no one watching the battle. No one would take the initiative to announce the result of this battle. Therefore, they were indeed prepared to leave Rizhao alive and let him escape back to Zixian to achieve their goal of spreading the news of this battle. At the very least, they wanted to let Zixian know that Jade Conch was not a place where they could come and go as they pleased. Who would have thought that the Deer Demon Venerable would be so decisive? After hearing Wu Qima's words, the Deer Demon Venerable's face suddenly turned green and white. He opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood. His entire appearance quickly turned pale, and his chi was like a deflated balloon, slipping down at an alarming speed. He obviously couldn't accept the truth. Exploding his demon core had already caused him to lose a lot of his foundation. Now that his mind was shaken, even if he didn't want to die, there was no possibility of living. How sad! Wu Qima looked at him quietly, then suddenly smiled at him. I was lying to you. Do you really think you have a chance to live? Venerable Deer Monster was confused and disoriented by him. He didn't know what to believe anymore. However, there was no need to think too much. His chi was quickly weakening to the extreme, and his vitality was dissipating. While Wu Qima and the Deer Demon Venerable were talking, the other Rizhao of the Little Human clan had already moved out and quickly rushed into the final battlefield. Zixian's army of demon venerables had suffered great losses. As the demon venerables fell one by one, they no longer had the will to fight and were fleeing in all directions. The Jade Conch alliance split up and chased after them, and even Lu Yi joined in. However, this kind of pursuit couldn't kill them all. However, with the addition of the Rizhao of the Little Human clan, the situation was different. In terms of speed, the Rizhao of the Little Human clan couldn't be compared to the average cultivator. Anyone who was caught was doomed. This kind of pursuit lasted for half a day. All the purple jade demon venerables who came to attack, regardless of whether they were Yu Yao or Xing Su, all of them fell. It could be said that in this battle, Zixian had been completely annihilated from top to bottom. Such a result was rarely seen in any battle in the starry skies where the strength and number of forces were similar. After the battle, it was naturally time to clean up the battlefield. All demon venerables had demon cores in their bodies, and demon cores were resources that could be used in many situations. Although many demon venerables had exploded their demon cores during the battle, most of them were still left behind. This was especially true for Rizhao-level demon cores. Each one was extremely precious. There were also the storage rings of the purple jade demon venerables. They always had some good stuff on them, and now they were all spoils of war for the Jade Conch Alliance. Other than that, there were only 2 slightly damaged Yu Yao battleships left. The Purple Jade fleet consisted of 1 large ship and 4 smaller ones. Lu Yi had used the precious blood clone to self-detonate and destroyed 1 ship. Then he used the giant blade to cut through another ship. The largest ship's protection had been broken by the sword chi of the sword gourd, but it was also cut open by his blade. Only 2 ships were still intact. These were all resources that could be recovered. Outside Fangsuan Mountain, on the central battleship, the Mermaid Clan cultivators were resting and adjusting their breathing. Although they didn't directly participate in the battle, whether it was the use of their clan weapons or the chanting of the Song of the Tides, it was a huge burden on them. Their leader, Yan Miao, was pale. If she really wanted to compare, she had paid far more in this battle than if she had directly participated in the battle. This was because the Mermaid Clan's population was too small, and the range of their secret technique's blessing was too wide. There were too many people, and Yan Miao was the one who led the enhancement of the Rizhao. This short battle had almost emptied her Rizhao's foundation. Qin Yi stood beside Yan Miao, dizzily looking at the many cultivators who were busy around her. For a moment, she felt like she was in a dream. She had been entrusted by Lu Yi to stay in Fangsuan Mountain. Her main task was to look after the many medical cultivators. After all, when the battle started, there would definitely be injuries. When the time came, they would return to Fangtsuan Mountain to heal. Of course, she understood that Lu Ye's arrangement was to not let her show her face in public. He didn't want Zixian to hold a grudge and implicate the 4-star systems. She was actually very worried about staying in Fangtsuan Mountain because Zixian was very powerful. Even though she had seen many Rizhao of the dwarf clan before, she wasn't sure if Lu Ye's side was a match for them. During the battle, she and many medical cultivators waited in Fangtsuan Mountain. In the end, they didn't even see a single one of them come back to heal. This gave Qin Yi an extremely bad feeling. In such a situation, either the battle hadn't broken out yet, so no one was injured, or the battle was so fierce that the injured cultivators didn't have time to come back to heal and were still fighting desperately. If it was the first case, it wouldn't be a big deal. However, if it was the second, the result would be terrible. End of chapter. Chapter 2030. Just as Qin Yi was waiting anxiously for half a day, a Xiaoru suddenly returned to Mount Fengsun. He called out to the waiting medical cultivators and informed them that the battle was over. They had won a great victory and the Zixian army had been completely annihilated. Qin Yi was in disbelief. She knew the strength of Zixian's army, which was why she had rushed to Jade Conch. Such a force was not something an ordinary galaxy could contend with. Even if Jade Conch's foundation was not bad and they had the capital to contend with Zixian, they would have to pay a huge price to defeat the other party. But how long had it been? Jade Conch had won, and it was a great victory. On the contrary, the Zixian army that she could only look up to had been completely annihilated. A complete annihilation. This undoubtedly meant that no one from the Zixian army had escaped. What price would Jade Conch have to pay for such a great victory? Qin Yi thought that Jade Conch would also suffer great losses, but there were not many injured cultivators on their side, not to mention those who died in battle. On the chaotic battlefield, corpses of Zixian Yao cultivators were everywhere. Some maintained their human forms before they died, while others returned to their original forms. All of them were baring their fangs and brandishing their claws, looking terrifying. After the battle, the Jade Conch cultivators gathered in groups of 3 to 5, happily collecting the spoils of war. In Qin Yi's eyes, they did not look like they had just fought a war, but a group of people who were going to the market. All kinds of bizarre things made Qin Yi dizzy, feeling that the world was strange. The battle did not take too long, but cleaning up the battlefield took a lot of effort. 3 days later, the dust finally settled. Everything that should be collected had been collected, including the battleships that were destroyed by Lu Yi. They were all pulled into Mount Fangtsuan by the cultivators. Although the battleships were damaged, there were still many places where they could be used, especially the Rainbow-class battleship. If they could find a suitable person to repair it, it might still have a chance to see the light of day again. The Jade Conch army gathered in Mount Fangtsuan to celebrate, while Lu Yi drove Mount Fangtsuan back the way he came. A few days later, Mount Fangtsuan was resettled near Jiuzhou. After the celebration, Su Yuan found Lu Yi and bid him farewell. The Soul Race came out this time mainly because of Lu Ye's request. If not for Lu Yi, the Soul Race would not have rashly participated in the battle in the starry sky. Now that the dust of the battle had settled, the Soul Race had no intention of staying outside for long. Naturally, they had to return to their ancestral land. Lu Yi enthusiastically urged him to stay. This time, the battle against Zixian had gone so smoothly because of the spiritlings. Under the influence of the spiritlings, the strength of the Jade Conch Alliance army, from Xingqiu to Rizhao, had increased greatly. This was why they had been able to win so easily. Otherwise, with the support of the merfolk's secret technique, the Jade Conch Alliance would only be able to gain the upper hand at most. Large numbers of casualties would be unavoidable. Su Yuan tactfully declined. The reason why the Spiritas were unwilling to show themselves outside was mainly because they did not like the outside environment. Just like how fish needed to live in the water, the ancestral land was the most suitable place for the Spiritas to live. Although it wasn't as exaggerated as a fish out of water in the outside world, it was still uncomfortable. Only by attaching one's soul to a living being would this discomfort be eliminated. But unless they were extremely close, Who would be willing to be possessed by the soul race? If that was the case, then there wouldn't be any secrets left. You're now in the Jin Rizhao dynasty. You should finish your chores and come to the ancestral land. Cultivating the soul-subduing secret technique in the ancestral land has a unique advantage, advised Su Yuan. Yes, replied Lu Yi respectfully. Every Rizhao dynasty cultivator had their own soul-subduing secret technique. This was because once one reached this realm, it was the cultivation of a god. The soul-subduing secret technique was the most important part of this cultivation. This secret technique was extremely important to the Rizhao dynasty and would not be used lightly. But once it was used, it would be a battle of life and death. Before Bai Chen died, he had used his own soul-subduing secret technique in a vain attempt to drag Lu Yi down with him. In the end, he was stopped by Su Yuan. Although Su Yuan had blocked it easily, that was because he was a spiritus. No other race could compare to his cultivation of the soul. In fact, if Su Yuan hadn't acted, even Chen Xianhai wouldn't have been able to completely block the soul-subduing secret technique. If it had affected Lu Yi, the consequences would have been dire. Even if Su Yuan hadn't mentioned it, Lu Yi was prepared. In this world, there was no place more suitable for cultivating the soul-subduing secret technique than the ancestral land of the spiritus. Yi and the sacred beast will stay behind. Take care of them, instructed Su Yuan. It was rare to have a chance to spend time with Lu Yi, so Yi naturally didn't want to miss it. She didn't plan to return to the ancestral land for the time being and stayed behind with Hupo. Don't worry, elder. Lu Yi nodded. To him, Yi and Hupo were family. Of course, he wouldn't let anything happen to them. Moreover, in Mount Minuscule, there was nothing that could threaten them. The spiritas left under Su Yuan's lead. Lu Yi sent them off. A moment later, the Rizhao dynasty from the south and west of Mount Minuscule also came to bid farewell. This time, they had come to reinforce Lu Yi. Each of them only had one Rizhao to guard Mount Fengzhen. Many of Yu Yao's subordinates had been transferred over as well. Now that the battle was over, they naturally had to rush back to prevent the two divisions from encountering any mishaps on their way back. They were all family, and their relationship was even closer than with the spiritus. Naturally, Lu Yi didn't need to be too courteous with them. In front of the formation, the humanoid race's Rizhao dynasty gathered. Lu Yi said, "We were going to talk about this in 2 days, but since the South and West senior brothers and sisters are leaving, we can discuss it first." Wu Ji, the leader of the South, looked at Lu Yi. "Junior brother Lu, what are you talking about?" Lu Yi said, "Senior brothers and sisters, you should know about the Wanxiang Sea. The current situation is that the three-world island controls the Wanxiang Sea. We have also reached some agreements with the major galaxies, so there shouldn't be any problems. In the previous battle, 3 top-tier spiritual islands fell into our hands. Now, I've handed the Wanxiang Island to Rizhao from the Wanxiang Galaxy to manage. He will rebuild the Wanxiang Chamber of Commerce and share the profits. There are still Purple Jade Island and Winged Sky Island left. These 2 are both top-tier spiritual islands. What I mean is, does the humanoid race want one or both?" Hearing this, the Rizhao dynasty raised their eyebrows. Top-tier spiritual islands. Every top-tier spiritual island in the Wanxiang Sea was a treasure trove. Usually, only the top forces could occupy them. Moreover, there was only a small number of them. Since ancient times, their numbers hadn't changed much. Even when the Wanxiang Galaxy was in charge of the Wanxiang Sea, they only occupied one Wanxiang Island. If not for the fact that top-tier spiritual islands were so precious, the Tianyan realm wouldn't have coveted Wushuang Island. In the end, they didn't reap any benefits and even got into trouble. Now that the three-world island was in charge, they controlled 3 spiritual islands. Including the three-world island, they had 4. How many top-tier spiritual islands were there in the entire Wanxiang Sea? Occupying 4 of them was an exaggeration. The Rizhao dynasty from the humanoid race looked at each other. They could see the desire in each other's eyes. It wasn't that they didn't know about the convenience of the Wanxiang Sea. In the past, the 3 tribes of the humanoid race were divided and couldn't merge. Moreover, they wandered around and didn't have the chance to touch the Wanxiang Sea. Now it was different. Lu Yi had found the core of Mount Fengzhen. The eastern region had already merged with the core. The southern region would arrive soon. Once the western region merged, Mount Fangsuan would be complete. They finally didn't have to wander around anymore. The three-world island controlled the Wanxiang Sea and had extra top-tier spiritual islands. It could be said that the humanoid race was in a favorable position. If they could occupy a top-tier spiritual island in the Wanxiang Sea, it would be of great benefit to the development of the humanoid race. Their spiritual talismans had always been in short supply. Just this business alone would ensure that the humanoid race wouldn't have to worry about resources in the future. As the leader of the humanoid race, Rizhao dynasty naturally had to consider the future of his race. This is feasible. I have no objections. Wu Ji nodded. On the western side, Zhang Kuan also nodded. I have no objections either. What about Brother Chen? He looked at Chen Xianhai. Chen Xianhai said, that's good too. Our race will occupy a top-tier spiritual island in the Wanxiang Sea. Then, we'll have a place to stay in the Wanxiang Sea. Zi Xian suffered such a great loss this time. She definitely won't let it go. Yu Luo and the others might not dare to come again. They might even go to the Wanxiang Sea to cause trouble. When that time comes, we can send Rizhao dynasty to hold the fort, just in case. Lu Yi blinked. The people of Fangsuan Mountain didn't know about the 3 treasures Rui money yet. If they did, they would definitely understand that compared to Yu Luo, the Wanxiang Sea was a place they didn't dare to go. To Zi Xian, that place was truly a tiger's den. Then it's settled. Zi Xian or Wing Sky Island will be reserved for you. Zi Xian it is. Chen Xianhai decided. This time, Demon Venerable Zi Xian basically died at the hands of Rizhao dynasty of the humanoid race. Since there was already enmity, there was no need to fear occupying the original Zi Xian Island. Lu Yi naturally had no objections. After a short while, he used his position as the Lord of Fangsuan Mountain to activate the formation and send away the humanoid race from the south and west. It won't take long for the south to merge with us. When that time comes, Fangsuan Mountain will become much stronger. I'm really looking forward to it. Wu Qima suddenly said. Lu Yi was also looking forward to it because it wasn't just the south that came. There was also the blood extinction world that came with them. This world was formed by one of the blood progenitor's arms. When it merged with the blood extinction world, who knew what would happen? Junior brother Lu, of the demon venerables Zi Xian we encountered this time, the 8 lesser demon venerables are probably dead. However, you have to be careful of the 2 greater demon venerables in the future, Chen Xianhai said. Lu Yi was stunned. Senior brother, do you mean the one who came this time wasn't the real one? Chen Xianhai shook his head. I'm not sure. Avatars are different from ordinary avatars, so even I can't tell if it's the real one or not. Moreover, even if Bai Chen and Mo Xian came with their real bodies, there must be avatars alive. They suffered great losses in this battle, but Yu Luo's background was also exposed. Lu Yi smiled. That's fine. If we can make Zi Xian suffer once, we can do it again. They suffered great losses in this battle and won't dare to come again in the short term. As long as you know. Chen Xianhai nodded. End of chapter. Chapter 2031. The liveliness in Fangsuan Mountain gradually dissipated with the departure of the Soul clan and the southern and western human clans. The cultivators of the Qingli Dao world and the Jade Conch world were not in a hurry to return. Many of the constellations called their friends to the 9 states. The existence of the 9 states Azura field was no longer a secret. Long ago, there were cultivators from the 2 worlds who received the news and came to the 9 states to participate in the training of the Azura field. But that was only a minority. Most of them had only heard of the magic of the Azura field and had never experienced it personally. This was a rare opportunity. Naturally, they had to enter and experience it. After all, the training in the Azura field was greatly beneficial to the growth of cultivators. After Lu Yi heard the news, he quickly contacted Little Nine. So many constellations, how is the burden of the Azura field? The maintenance of the Azura field required consumption. A portion of the consumption was the foundation of the 9 provinces, but more of it was the spirit jades. The Azura field was a type of treasure. Little 9 could borrow the power of the spirit jades to activate its might, creating scenes that could allow cultivators to train. The stronger the cultivator who entered, the greater the consumption. For the current 9 states, there was almost no consumption for cultivators below the divine sea level to train. Only constellations had such consumption. In the past, there were not many constellations in the 9 states, so the consumption was naturally not much. But now, there were thousands of constellations in the 9 states. This number was not small. "It's okay," Little 9 immediately replied. Now, the spiritual energy in the starry sky is much more active than before. The resources absorbed by the 9 states from the starry sky are enough to maintain the consumption. And this activity is getting more and more intense. In another 10 or 20 years, there may be no problem for Yueyao to come in and train. Getting more and more intense? Lu Yi was a little stunned. He had not noticed this kind of thing because every time he returned to the 9 provinces, he would not stay for too long. He was not like Little 9. The 9 provinces lay in this place, and any changes in the spiritual energy in the nearby starry sky could not escape its observation. "Yes, it has been like this since a few years ago. Do you know the reason?" Lu Yi asked. Although it was a good thing for the 9 states that the spiritual energy in the starry sky had become more active, the improvement of the resources of the 9 states would increase. This was because the resources of any realm were increased by devouring and fusing the spiritual energy in the starry sky. This was an extremely long process. But everything had a reason. Lu Yi felt that it was best to figure out the source of this change. "I'm not sure. How could Little 9 know the reason? It was born from the combination of the source of 9 regions and the tool spirit of the Tianji disk. It knew everything that happened in 9 regions like the back of its hand, but it had no way to investigate anything that happened outside of 9 regions." Lu Yi thought for a moment and said, "Observe more. If there's anything wrong, remember to tell me as soon as possible." "Got it." Little 9 agreed and suddenly thought of something. "By the way, Lu Yi, is there a problem with the Qingli Dao realm? The constellations born in that realm can't be promoted to Yuyao?" "There is indeed such a problem." Lu Yi nodded. He was not surprised that Little 9 knew about this. Previously, many cultivators from the Qingli Dao world had come to the 9 states to gain experience in the Shura field. Perhaps Little 9 had overheard some people chatting. "But do you have a solution?" Little 9 chuckled. "I do have an idea." "Tell me about it." Little 9 then mumbled something to Lu Yi. Lu Yi was dumbfounded as he listened. "That works too?" "Of course. This way, it will be good for the 9 states, and the problem of the Qingli Dao world will be solved. Don't you always talk about saving the country in a roundabout way? This is not a bad idea." "There is a way." Lu Yi admitted that Little 9 was right, but this idea was somewhat ridiculous. He thought for a moment and said, "I'll talk to Old Tang and Wu Zhuo when I have time." Among the 3 realms in the galaxy, the 9 states was originally at the bottom. However, with Lu Ye's promotion to Sunshine and the placement of Fangsuan Mountain, the Qingli Dao world was now the most pitiful. There were only 2 Yuyao in the entire realm, and one of them, Tang Jun, had exhausted his potential. It was impossible to predict how far Wu Zhuo could go. This time, Tang Jun had also returned to Jade Conch. It was his first time returning since he was stranded in the island of all manifestations. Now, these 2, the Yu Yao of Jade Conch, Wan Xiaoa, and the Mermaid Clan were all staying in Fangsuan Mountain. While Lu Yi was talking to Little 9, a few figures flew over and landed in front of him. They were the blood warriors under his command, the Xiang Yin Xianyu sisters, Ding Bei Feng, and Ma Shangxi, who had returned with Lu Yi from the island of all manifestations. In the previous battle with Zi Xian, these 4 blood warriors had contributed greatly. The blood race played a great role in such a battlefield. The 4 of them joined forces and spread a huge sea of blood, destroying a large number of Zi Xian's Yao cultivators. It could be said that they had made outstanding contributions. The blood warriors saluted in unison. "What is it?" Lu Yi turned to look at them. Xiang Yin Xianyu and Ding Beifeng did not speak. Only Ma Shangxi stammered, "Sir, I have a request. I hope sir will grant it." As soon as he spoke, Lu Yi knew what he wanted. He waved his hand and said, "If you want to go, then go. You don't have to go to the island of all manifestations anymore." What he wanted was nothing more than to enter the blood refinement realm to cultivate. Back then, when Lu Yi first brought him to the 9 states, he had already mentioned this matter. However, Lu Yi did not agree at that time because he had just ascended to Yuyao. If Ma Shangxi were to ascend to Sunshine, there might be some unpredictable consequences. Now that Lu Yi had broken through to the Sunshine realm, of course, he hoped that the strength of his blood warriors would be as strong as possible. The 4 blood warriors were all at the late Moon Jade realm, with Ma Shangxi's background being the strongest. If he could break through to the Sunshine realm, he would undoubtedly play a greater role in the future. Ma Shangxi was stunned for a moment before he was overjoyed and bowed deeply. "Many thanks, sir." He had heard that Xiang Yin Xianyu and the others had been cultivating in the blood-refining realm all this time. When he heard the news at that time, his heart was filled with bitterness. He was obviously Lu Ye's first blood warrior, and he was the one who, fortunately, Lu Ye did not refuse this time. He left gratefully. Glancing in the direction the blood warriors left, Lu Yi withdrew his gaze. Under his perception, the 9 regions was more lively than ever before. This time, many cultivators returned to their homeland, so of course, there were many places to reminisce and make arrangements. Not to mention other places, just the Blue Blood sect, with the return of the sect master and the others, the entire sect was celebrating as if it was the new year. This was just a microcosm of the current situation in the 9 regions. All the major sects were the same. Lu Ye's heart was at ease. In the past, when the insect path was not accessible, no matter how famous the 3-world island was in the 10,000 Elephant Sea and how many benefits it obtained, it still felt like a tree without roots and water without a source. Now it was different. The insect path was connected to the 10,000 Elephant Sea and the Jade Conch Galaxy, so it was no longer as troublesome for cultivators to travel between the 2 places. The Jade Conch Galaxy also had the closest connection to the 10,000 Elephant Sea, so the 3-world island could be considered to have its own roots. If one day something happened in the 10,000 Elephant Sea, everyone could retreat to the Jade Conch Galaxy. Thinking back to when he and Old Tang were stranded in the 10,000 Elephant Sea, they had nowhere to go and were all alone. Now, they controlled the entire 10,000 Elephant Sea, like a carp that leaped over the Dragon's Gate, and their status had undergone a tremendous change. "Junior brother Lu, you're here." A voice suddenly sounded. Lu Yi turned his head and saw a woman's figure landing. He nodded slightly. "Senior sister Qin, senior sister is..." Qin Yi smiled. "I'm leaving. I came to say goodbye to you." She had witnessed a great show this time and was greatly shocked. She was moved by the unity of the Jade Conch Galaxy cultivators and was even more shocked by Lu Ye's connections and methods. This great battle involved the human race, the demon race, the humanoid race, the soul race, the mermaid race, the flower race, the wood spirit race, the spore race. This was rare anywhere. Lu Yi was shocked. "You're going back now?" Qin Yi raised her hand and smoothed her hair that was messed up by the wind. "I have to go back eventually." Lu Yi nodded and did not urge her to stay. "Then I'll send you off." "Thank you very much." He naturally knew the purpose of Qin Yi's visit this time. In the face of a colossus like Zixuan, that was already the limit of what Qin Yi could do, which was also the limit of the 4 galaxies. They were powerless to do anything more, so of course Lu Yi had to thank her. Qin Yi waved her hand. "Junior brother, you don't have to thank me for not being of any help." She paused and said, "However, I have a request." When she said this, she could not help but blush with shame. She did not help at all, and now she had to ask for help. However, this matter was related to the 4 Corners Galaxy, so she had to ask. "Senior sister, are you talking about the insect path?" Lu Yi knew that in the past, if the people from the 4 Corners Galaxy wanted to go to the 10,000 Elephant Sea, they had to travel for a long time. They had to follow the route he took back then and finally use the insect path in the Long Cloud Galaxy to enter the 10,000 Elephant Sea. Compared to using the Jade Conch Galaxy, such a route would undoubtedly take more time and effort. Qin-Yi already knew about the insect path, so she naturally had her own ideas. That's right. Qin-Yi nodded. I would like to ask Junior Brother to allow the cultivators from the Four Corners Galaxy to use your insect path to enter the 10,000 Elephant Sea in the future. This way, they would save at least half the time. Moreover, the Long Cloud Galaxy was not very friendly to them. Every time they wanted to use the insect path, they had to pay a sum of spiritual jade as a toll. However, if they wanted to use the Jade Conch Galaxy, they would not have to pay this extra fee. That's not a problem. Lu Yi agreed immediately. The insect path is not stable enough now. I'll arrange for the Jade-class warships to be on standby there and take cultivators back and forth. When the insect path gradually stabilizes in the future, it will be easier to pass through. Currently, there were 3 Jade-class warships that could be used in the 9 states. 1 was brought back from the 10,000 Elephant Sea, 2 were seized, and a few warships that Lu Yi destroyed needed to be repaired. Lu Yi planned to use 2 of them and place them at the 2 ends of the insect path. Thank you, Junior Brother. Qin-Yi bowed gracefully. Although she knew that Lu Yi would not refuse, Qin-Yi was still very grateful that he agreed so readily. Her senior brothers from the Four Corners Galaxy would never have imagined that the Jade Conch Galaxy had such a terrifying foundation. The Zixuan army that they thought was unstoppable was completely wiped out by the Jade Conch Galaxy in a single battle. Qin-Yi could almost imagine their shocked expressions when she returned and told them what had happened here. That would be interesting. End of chapter. Chapter 2032. Qin-Yi left. In the end, Lu Yi didn't send her off. She was going back to the Four Directions Galaxy. It was a long journey, so where could he send her off? Moreover, Lu Yi had agreed to let the Four Directions Galaxy pass through, so they would be in close contact in the future. Lu Ye's figure flickered, and he left. A moment later, he returned to the Jade Blood Sect. Yi immediately sensed his return and rushed over with Hoop. She held onto his arm, as if she didn't want to be separated from him ever again. After chatting with Yi for a while, he went to look for the busy second senior sister. After a long time, Lu Yi finally reacted. Where are Sect Master and Master? He actually didn't see the old couple's figures. Second senior sister smiled and said, the 2 of them suddenly sensed something and went into seclusion. Lu Ye's expression became serious. Are they going to break through to the Yu Yao realm? Shui Yuan nodded. That should be it. Moreover, it's not just the 2 of them. According to the news I received, after this battle, many of the older generation are showing signs of breaking through. Soon, many new Yu Yao will appear in the 9 states. Calculating the time, it was about time for these older cultivators to break through. One had to know that they were all leading figures of various eras in the 9 states. Whether it was talent or talent, they were all top-notch. After Lu Yi entered the 10,000 Elephant Sea, the cultivation environment was excellent, and there was no lack of resources. It was only natural that they would break through to the constellation realm. Although the battle with Zixuan wasn't difficult, before the battle began, everyone had disregarded life and death. They all carried a sense of determination. After a great victory, they returned to their homeland after a long time, and their hearts settled down peacefully. Such a change in state of mind undoubtedly had the effect of breaking through their shackles. This was why so many of the older cultivators had gone into seclusion. Not only the older cultivators, but the younger cultivators like Feng Wujiang and Li Baxian also entered seclusion one after another. It was indeed as Shui Yuan said. Soon, many new Yu Yao would appear in the 9 states. Senior sister should be almost there, right? Lu Yi asked. Shui Yuan smiled and said, I can still suppress it a little. That's good. Lu Yi nodded. He looked toward the sect master's residence and sighed. What a pity. In the past, he had told the cultivators of the 3-world island that if there were signs of a breakthrough to the Yu Yao realm, they should inform him in advance. This was because there would be great benefits if they could break through to the Yuyao realm in the Constellation Hall. Back then, Bai Lu and the other mermaid clan cultivators had helped Yuyao ascend to the Constellation Hall. At that time, he didn't know much about Yuyao. He only knew that there were benefits, but he didn't know what those benefits were. Now, he understood that if Yuyao was promoted in the Constellation Hall, the quality of her source would be slightly higher. This was undoubtedly beneficial to her future cultivation. Unfortunately, ascension was not something that could be controlled by humans. When one reached a critical point, forcefully suppressing one's cultivation base would not only bring no benefits, it would even cause problems. Furthermore, he was not in the 10,000 Elephant Sea most of the time, so over the years, many cultivators from the Jade Conch realm had managed to ascend to Yuyao. It was the same this time. The sect leader and the others felt that the time had come, so they might as well let nature take its course. Shui Yuan's situation was a little different. She had spent most of her time concocting pills, so her cultivation progress was slightly slower. Naturally, she could suppress it slightly. However, even if the sect leader and the others were to ascend in the 9 states, it wouldn't be much of a problem. At most, they wouldn't be able to obtain a better source, so it wouldn't affect their foundations. Furthermore, ascending in their homeland could deepen the connection between them and their homeland. In the future, if they were to compete with others in their homeland, they would have a certain degree of advantage. Moreover, if the 9 states could ascend to a top-grade realm in the future, the sect leader and the others would also gain more benefits. Lu Yi didn't think too much about it. He looked at Shui Yuan and said, "It's been a long time since I tasted senior sister's cooking." Back when Lu Ye's cultivation hadn't been very high, Shui Yuan had done everything she could to help Lu Yi recuperate. Every time she returned, she would prepare a delicious and rich medicinal cuisine. Now that he thought about it, he really missed it. "Wait here." Shui Yuan pursed her lips into a smile, then turned around and left. "I'll go help." He bounced up and down, following Shui Yuan's footsteps. Lu Yi stayed in the Jade Blood sect for a few days, and he truly enjoyed these days. A few days later, Tang Jun and Wu Zhuo, who had been staying in the Fangsuan Mountain, received his summons and rushed to the Jade Blood sect. On the Jade Bamboo Peak, Lu Yi received the 2 of them and served them tea. Lao Tang sighed, "The 9 heavens, no, the 9 prefectures are so vast and rich in resources. In comparison, if the 9 prefectures were a bustling city, then the Qingli Taoist world was a remote mountain village. The appearance and overall standard of the cultivation world couldn't be compared at all." Lao Tang changed the topic and asked, "It said that the 9 prefectures was a top-notch world 10,000 years ago. Is this true?" He obviously heard some rumors from somewhere. That was 10,000 years ago. Who knows? Lu Yi smiled. "If you think the 9 prefectures are good, why don't you move here and retire?" Tang Jun curled his lips. "I'm willing, but are you willing?" Lu Yi thought for a while and nodded. "The Wanxiang Sea can't do without you." Ever since the rise of the 3-World Island, Tang Jun had been the chief of external affairs of the 3-World Island. He was in contact with all kinds of people. Without him, the 3-World Island would have a lot of inconveniences. "That's why I said that I was born to be busy." Tang Jun picked up the teacup and drank it in one gulp. He looked at Lu Yi with a bitter face. "You're not kind, kid. I was fooled by you." "What do you mean?" Lu Yi was surprised. Tang Jun carefully recounted. "When this old man first met you, you said you were called Li Tai Bai. It was a long time later that this old man found out that this name was fake. It was only recently that this old man found out that not only was your name fake, your background was also fake." Lu Yi was speechless. Why bring up the past? Tang Jun didn't let it go. "No, kid, you have to tell me clearly which part of you is real?" Lu Yi sighed. "My respect for you is real." Tang Jun was speechless. After a while, he said sullenly, "Kid, you really rely on your mouth. I deserve to be fooled by you." Wu Zhuo looked at them bickering and smiled without saying anything. "Tell me, why did you summon us here?" Tang Jun asked. Lu Yi thought about it and finally decided to say it directly, "Integration of the world." Tang Jun was stunned. He was knowledgeable, but he didn't understand at all. He asked in confusion, "What do you mean?" Wu Zhuo was also puzzled. Lu Yi said, "It's very simple. Integrate the Qin Li Dao world into the 9 states. From then on, there will be no more Qin Li Dao world. The 2 worlds will become one." Tang Jun and Wu Zhuo were dumbfounded. Old Tang asked, "Can this be done?" Lu Yi nodded. "Since I said so, it can definitely be done. However, if the 2 of you agree to this, it will require a lot of preparation work, and this can't be done overnight." "Can it really be done?" Tang Jun asked with uncertainty. Lu Yi answered seriously. Since little Jiao suggested this method was feasible. He continued, "Of course, I know that this is a serious matter, so I agree." Before Lu Yi could finish, Old Tang immediately expressed his opinion and turned to Wu Zhuo. Wu Zhuo also nodded slowly. "If this can be done, I have no objections." Lu Yi blinked and the rest of his sentence was stuck in his throat. He could only swallow it. "Won't the 2 of you think about it more?" Old Tang said, "Let me ask you a question. After the integration, the Qin Li Dao world will be completely integrated into the 9 states, right? Will the problem that has been plaguing our world still exist?" Lu Yi knew what problem he was talking about. It was the problem of the constellations in the Qin Li Dao world being unable to upgrade Yu Yao. This was the problem of the entire Qin Li Dao world, and it was not something that could be solved by humans. The main reason was that the divine light produced in the Qin Li Dao world was flawed and could only allow cultivators to upgrade to constellations. After the integration, the Qin Li Dao world will no longer exist. Naturally, that problem will no longer exist. Lu Yi replied. "Then there is no problem." Tang Jun nodded. Lu Yi could not help but say, "I think the 2 of you should think about it more." Tang Jun raised his hand to stop him. Compared to the 2 realms, the 9 states has a more profound and powerful foundation. It has only been a few years since the 9 states became a large realm. In terms of foundation, even the Jade Conch world cannot compare to you. With such a rapid improvement, you have the potential to become a top realm. Furthermore, the 9 states has the Azura field. Regardless of whether you are from the Spirit Stream or the Star Mansion, you can train yourselves there. I heard that the 9 states also has the unfathomable heavenly design, which coordinates all things. These are all things that the Qin Li Dao world desires but cannot obtain. After the integration of the realms, everyone will be a cultivator of the 9 states. Wu Zhuo nodded and said, "There is one more thing. The Qin Li Dao world is the first to bear the brunt of Zi Xian's invasion. If you did not gather so many helpers to fend off the enemy, the Qin Li Dao world would have been destroyed. With the current strength of our world, we do not have the ability to resist the enemy. However, if we integrate into the 9 states, we will not have to worry about these problems. After all, Mount Fengsuan is nearby." Tang Jun continued, "Indeed, no matter how bad my homeland is, it is the place where I was born and raised. I am also reluctant to part with it. However, if the integration of the world can give future generations a better and brighter future, it is reasonable for our generation to make some sacrifices." As he said this, he looked at Lu Yi and said, "There is no reason to reject such a good thing." Lu Yi looked at the 2 of them and said, "It seems that the 2 of you have agreed." Old Tang urged, "Agree. You should act quickly on your side. If there is anything that you need from the world, do not hesitate to ask." The integration of the world was not something that could be done overnight. It required a lot of preparation in the early stages. Seeing that their attitude was firm and even a little impatient, Lu Yi immediately explained. The 2 of them listened and nodded continuously. From time to time, they were surprised because many of the things that Lu Yi said were impossible to achieve. However, since Lu Yi had made such arrangements, there should be no problem. End of chapter. Chapter 2033. The first thing to be done was to make arrangements for the living beings of the Qin Dao world. Otherwise, there would be a lot of casualties in the process. Not to mention the ordinary people who had never cultivated before Even the cultivators below the constellation level would not be able to withstand the torment of the realm. Therefore, not long after Lu Yi, Tang Jun, and Wu Zhuo's discussion, a group of constellations set off from the 9 states and rushed to the Qingli Dao world with a large number of Tianji pillars. In the future, as long as these Tianji pillars were placed in the Qingli Dao world, then the living beings of the entire world could be transferred through the Tianji pillars. After everything was arranged, the Tianji pillars would absorb the foundation of the Qingli Dao world and lead the Qingli Dao world to converge with the 9 states and complete the realm integration. In the past, Little Nine could not do such a thing. The Tianji pillars could only connect a limited range. However, as the foundation of the 9 states continued to strengthen over the years, its ability to exert more and more power, especially after obtaining the Azura field. The power of this treasure could imperceptibly strengthen Little Nine's own ability. It could be said that they complemented each other. It was no exaggeration to say that with the help of the Azura field, the Tianji pillars could now cover more than half of the Jade Snail Galaxy. The reason why Little Nine mentioned the realm integration to Lu Yi was naturally because it would be beneficial to the 9 states. After the realm integration, the foundation of the Qingli Dao world would belong to the 9 states. It would definitely be of great help to the growth of the 9 states. No matter what problems the Qingli Dao world had, it was still a large world that could nurture constellations. In the past, 9 regions had devoured the foundation of the blood refining world and the foundation of the Wushuang continent, but these 2 worlds were only low-level regions. Even so, after devouring the foundation of the blood refining world, 9 regions had also been promoted to a large region. When the 9 states swallowed the foundation of the Qingli Dao world in the future, no one knew what would happen. Lu Yi handed over this matter to Wu Zhuo because Lu Yi could not stay in the galaxy for a long time. Tang Jun also could not stay, so in terms of candidate, only Wu Zhuo was left. As for the Qingli Dao world, under the premise of the 2 Yu Yao's agreement, the fate of the entire world had already been decided. Unsurprisingly, when the news spread, the constellations of the Qingli Dao world were reluctant to leave their homeland, but more than that, they were looking forward to it. In the short time they had been in the 9 prefectures, they had already seen too many novel things. Putting everything else aside, just the Azura field alone was enough for them to toss and turn. Lu Yi set the tone for the matter of the realm fusion and left it to Wu Zhuo to deal with. Little Nine would help him in secret. On his side, he ordered a group of people to drive 2 UAL-level central warships to the Insect Passage. Now that the Insect Passage was connected, it was convenient to travel between the local star system and the Wanxiang Sea. However, it was necessary to guard against people with ulterior motives from sneaking into the local star system. Therefore, there had to be people guarding both ends of the Insect Passage. This was a deployment that all galaxies had. Right now, the insect path wasn't stable enough. Even someone like Su Yiming, like Yu Yao, would be in danger if they tried to force their way through. Thus, they didn't need to worry too much. However, there would always be a time when the insect path would stabilize in the future. Thus, they naturally had to make preparations in advance. There weren't many sunshine in the local star system, but there were already quite a few Yu Yao. Most of them were from the Jade Conch realm, so it wasn't a problem for them to take turns overseeing the situation. A few days later, the 2 warships arrived at the entrance of the Insect Passage. Lu Yi left one warship to guard this end while he steered the other warship into the Insect Passage. As usual, he used the heart core of the Void Beast to open the way. It was a peaceful journey. Not long after, the warship appeared in the Wanxiang Galaxy. "This is the Wanxiang Galaxy?" On the deck of the warship, Han Dong spoke. As he looked around, his gaze was quickly attracted by a beautiful scene in the distance. Looking from this position, the beautiful scene was like a small water droplet, blooming with colorful lights. It was dazzling. However, Han Dong knew that it was small because it was too far away. If he were to get close to the small water droplet, it would definitely be a huge object. This time, besides Han Dong, there were 2 other Jade Conch Realm cultivators and Yu Yao who had ascended in the 3-realm island. There were also a few constellations who were responsible for guarding this place. They were the first batch of cultivators to guard the Insect Passage. That's the Wanxiang Sea. Lu Yi stood beside him and said, "If you're interested, you can go and take a look." Han Dong was clearly moved. He had heard of the Wanxiang Sea's famous name for so many years. Unfortunately, he had never had the chance to see it. Now that he finally saw it with his own eyes, of course he wanted to go and take a look. However, he still shook his head and said, "Next time. There will naturally be a chance when we have a break." Now that he was in the Wanxiang Galaxy, was there no need to worry about not having a chance? There was no hurry. "All right." Lu Yi did not force him. "Then I'll have to trouble you here." Han Dong said seriously, "I will not slack off when it comes to my duty." Lu Yi then looked at the others. "Follow me back to the island." This time, he had not only come to settle down the Yuyao warship, but also to bring some people back to the Three-Realm Island. Other than Tang Jun, the chief of external affairs, all the Mermaid Clan cultivators and a group of Yuyao also came along. Very few constellations had returned. Some of the constellations who had returned with him to the Jade Conch realm were now cultivating in seclusion. Most of them stayed in the 9 states to explore the Azura battlefield and train themselves. In total, there were less than 500 people who had returned. Lu Yi and Yen Miao channeled their magic power together, enveloping everyone and flying towards the Wanxiang Sea. Wan Xiao did not return. She had left the Jade Conch realm for many years. Now that she had finally returned, she naturally wanted to visit her homeland. She could be considered to have returned in glory. After a while, she would return on her own. A day later, everyone returned to the Three-Realm Island. Sensing the commotion, the cultivators who had stayed behind to guard the island came out to welcome them, led by Hua Xiai. These cultivators were all from the Jade Conch realm's 3 major realms. They had wanted to return with Lu Yi to kill the enemy, but someone had to stay behind to guard the Three-Realm Island. These days, they had been on tenterhooks and uneasy, not knowing what the fate of their galaxy was. Now that only a few people had returned out of more than 2,000 people, their expressions changed drastically. Hua Xi's expression was solemn, and her red lips were pursed. Seeing their expressions, Lu Yi knew that they had misunderstood. He smiled slightly and said, "Don't worry, our galaxy has won a complete victory in this battle. Zi Xian's 10 demon lords and 10,000 demon cultivators have all been killed." Many cultivators of the 3 realms were stunned at first, and then they were greatly shocked. They began to ask about the course of the battle. Cultivators familiar with each other quickly gathered in groups of 3 to 5. The full picture of the previous battle was gradually presented to the cultivators who had stayed behind. After learning that Lu Yi had invited many small humans and Ri Zhao of the Soul Clan, they could not hide their surprise. They did not know that Lu Ye's connections were so good that he could invite so many helpers at once. They lamented in their hearts that the demon lords of Zishuan had died unjustly. Even they did not know that the Jade Conch realm could bring out such a powerful lineup. Zishuan must have thought that the Jade Conch realm had sent out 10 demon lords. Who knew that they had kicked an iron plate? On the other side, Yi was snuggling in Hua Xi's arms. Yi had originally planned to return to the Soul Clan's ancestral land. Of course, she did not want to be separated from Lu Yi. However, in the previous battle, she could finally help Lu Yi a little with the soul possession technique. She immediately wanted to return to the ancestral land to continue improving her cultivation. A short separation was only for a longer reunion. Yi understood this principle. Lu Yi only asked her, "Do you miss big sister Hua Xiai?" Yi gave up the idea of returning to the Soul Clan's ancestral land and followed him to the Wanxiang Sea. She had a very good relationship with Hua Xiai. After not seeing her for so many years, she naturally missed her. Now that Yi was pestering Hua Xiai, Lu Yi felt extremely safe. He could feel that this woman still remembered what had happened before and wanted to cause trouble for him all the time. "Did anything happen recently?" Lu Yi asked. Hua Xiai rubbed Yi's little head and looked at him with a smile. "Nothing much. Many people are trying to find out why you left and where you went." Now, the 3-world island reigned supreme in the Wanxiang Sea. The previous movements of the 3-world island naturally could not be hidden from the investigation of people who wanted to know. However, as long as the news was not leaked, others would not be able to find out anything. Lu Yi nodded slightly and asked with concern, "No one wants to harm you, right?" Little Melon had swallowed the Tri-Treasure Scepter money. After various unexplainable changes, it was now a living starry sky absolute treasure. Its true master was Hua Ci. This was no secret. It was possible that no one wanted to take advantage of the three-world island's weakness to do something to Hua Ci. "I've been hiding." Hua Ci smiled. "And Little Melon has been hiding in the Wanxiang Sea. However, if a Rizhao dares to approach the three-world island, it will lock onto him with its divine sense." "That's good." Lu Yi relaxed. Being locked onto by a starry sky absolute treasure's divine sense was not a small matter for any Rizhao. Therefore, after experiencing such a situation a few times, no Rizhao dared to approach the three-world island. "Oh right, Juyen sent a message asking you to go to the Wanxiang Island to find her when you return. It seems that she has something to discuss with you." As Hua Ci spoke, she took out a stack of things and handed them over. "These are for you too." "What are these?" Li took them in shock. "Greeting Tieba," Hua Ci explained casually. "They are from all the top spiritual islands." Lu Yi checked and found that they were greeting cards. There were quite a number of them. If he really counted, all the top spiritual islands in the Wanxiang Sea had sent greeting cards. Previously, he had changed the rules of the Wanxiang Sea. The top spiritual islands could allow Rizhao to enter. Now, all the top spiritual islands should have made arrangements. Since Rizhao from all the top spiritual islands had come to the Wanxiang Sea, they naturally had to pay a visit to the owner of the island. These greeting cards were a form of etiquette. It was also the prestige of the previous battle. If not for the previous battle, who would look up to the three-world island? Lu Yi knew that these greeting cards originated from Little Melon. The three-world island alone was not qualified enough for the top spiritual islands to treat it with such care. Lu Yi did not have much of a relationship with the top spiritual islands. Other than the five-color island, he naturally could not be bothered with these greeting cards. He casually threw them aside. "You guys chat. I'll go and see Senior Mabin first," Lu Yi said and walked towards the Spirit Jade Mine. End of chapter. Chapter 2034. While Lu Yi was away, Hua Ci had been managing the three-world island. However, she was inexperienced and had limited energy, causing her to be overwhelmed most of the time. Now that Old Tang had returned, he would take over the management of the three-world island. Hua Ci was able to enjoy some peace as she chatted happily with it. Soon, her expression turned bitter as she was about to cry. In the Spirit Jade Mine, Lu Yi visited Ma Bin. Ma Bin had yet to recover from his injuries and was still recuperating. Hence, they only had a brief chat. After leaving the mystical Jade Vein, Lu Yi headed straight for the Island of Versatility. Half a day later, he arrived at the Island of Versatility. Lu Yi exclaimed after scanning the place with his divine sense. It was the Island of Versatility after all. Even after such a huge incident, the place was still as lively as before, with countless cultivators coming and going. The Island of Versatility, in particular, was the busiest place. However, when he recalled that he would receive half of the profits from the Island of Versatility in the future, his mood immediately improved. The more prosperous the place was, the greater the profits of the three-world island would be. Jiao Yan had done well. The fact that the Island of Versatility had been restored to its original state in such a short time made Lu Yi even more certain that he had made the right decision. If the Island of Versatility had not been handed over to Juyen, a local cultivator, it would have been impossible for it to recover so quickly. A divine sense extended from a certain direction of the Island of Versatility. Lu Yi immediately realized that Jiao Yan had sensed his arrival and was guiding him there. His figure flickered as he flew in that direction. A short while later, Lu Yi saw Jiao Yan's familiar figure again in the mystical jade vein of the Island of Versatility. "Senior sister," Lu Yi greeted. "No need to be so courteous." Jiao Yan stared at Lu Yi with her blurred face. She was slightly surprised after a brief glance, as she discovered that Lu Ye's aura had changed slightly. It wasn't that Lu Yi had become much stronger, but rather, it was a kind of confidence in his own strength. She couldn't help but wonder what had happened to Lu Yi recently. "Sit," Julian said. There was a futon not far from her. Lu Yi did not hesitate and sat down with his legs crossed. He glanced around and murmured, "As expected of the island of versatility, this mystical jade vein is much bigger than the three-world island. The larger the spirit jade mine was, the more spirit jade it produced. Sunshine, like Jiao Yen, would benefit from cultivating in it more. In the past, only the 5 Rizhao guardians were qualified to enter this place. Now, only Jiao Yen could enter. Legend has it that the island of versatility is the first spiritual island in the sea of versatility. Naturally, it has some extraordinary features. If you regret it, I can return the island of versatility," Jiao Yen said slowly. Lu Yi smiled. "Senior sister, what are you talking about? Since we have an agreement, of course we have to follow it. Moreover, the three-world island has more than one top-grade spiritual island. Why would we need so many?" Jiao Yen was speechless. To any realm, a top-grade spiritual island was an extremely important resource. Who would complain about having more? But Three-World Island didn't like it. Jiao Yen did not want to talk to him about this, so she changed the topic. "I heard that you are attacking a certain galaxy this time?" There was indeed such a rumor on the Sea of Versatility. Jiao Yen was not making it up. After all, many people had seen the Three-World Island deploy their troops and warships that day. "That's just a rumor." Lu Yi denied it immediately. "We just went back to protect our home. How is that attacking others? The cultivators of the Three-World Island are all peaceful people. We have always been kind and humble. We never cause trouble." Jiao Yan's eyelids twitched. She ignored his boasting and asked in confusion, "Protect your home? You mean to say that the worm path you used was connected to your home, and then you ran into trouble there?" Lu Yi did not hide it. "The galaxy we came from is called the Jade Snail Galaxy. Previously, Zixuan and the other demon lords led tens of thousands of troops to invade our galaxy. So, we went back and fought with them." Jiao Yen was stunned. "How is this related to Zixuan?" "It's all because of He Yun and Yuan Du." Lu Yi looked angry. "Back then, Yuan Du captured a few of the Three-World Islands constellations and used a soul-searching technique to find the location of our galaxy. He lured He Yun to seek revenge. As a result, He Yun suffered a great loss in our galaxy. He felt indignant and asked Zixuan's army to invade. When I heard the news, I quickly led people back to help." Jiao Yen was stunned for a while before she came back to her senses. What happened? Even with her sunny temperament, she could not help but be intrigued. She wanted to know the result of the battle. However, since Lu Yi could return safely, it must be because Zixuan was defeated. Zixuan was killed from the sunny to the constellations. They were all killed, Lu Yi said casually. Jiao Yan's heart trembled. She stared at Lu Yi and did not know whether to believe him or not. With the strength of the Three-World Islands reinforcements, there was no way they could fight back against Zixuan's army. Jiao Yan thought that the Three-World Island was lucky to be able to defeat Zixuan. Who would have thought that Lu Yi would say that Zixuan's army was killed? 10,000 monster cultivators were nothing, but the key was that there were 10 monster venerables. As far as I know, the starry sky treasure of the Three-World Island has always been on the Wanxiang Sea, Jiao Yan said slowly. What she meant was that without the help of the starry sky treasure, how could the Jade Conch Galaxy destroy an army like Zixuan's? Little Melon is indeed on the Wanxiang Sea, but my Jade Conch Galaxy is not a pushover. Lu Yi smiled, looking enigmatic. Jiao Yan looked at him, not knowing whether he was telling the truth or not. If he was telling the truth, it would be too exaggerated and not in line with the truth. However, if he was lying, Lu Yi had no reason to lie to her. It was meaningless. Besides, Zixuan had suffered a great loss. She should be able to find out after asking around. It seems that your Jade Conch Galaxy's waters run deep, Jiao Yan pointed out. Lu Yi smiled and changed the subject. By the way, why did Senior Sister summon me? Winged Sky Island. Jiao Yen said, "Someone from the Winged Sky planet contacted me. They want to pay a price to redeem the Winged Sky Island." Any top-grade spiritual island was a strategic resource for the top-grade domain that occupied it. It could not be lost easily. The battle on the Wanxiang Sea had nothing to do with the Winged Sky Island. However, Shen Yun thought that he had the Heavenly Luo umbrella and did not take the Three-World Island seriously. He wanted to take advantage of the situation, but Little Melon broke the Heavenly Luo umbrella and killed him on the spot. This directly led to the loss of the Winged Sky Island. The Winged Sky planet naturally wanted to redeem it from the Three-World Island. There was a precedent for this. Back then, the Three-World Island captured Zixien, and Zixien paid a price to redeem the island. Obviously, they had found Jiao Yen because they knew that Jiao Yen had a special relationship with the Three-World Island. Otherwise, they would not have let Jiao Yen manage the Wanxiang Island. Lu Yi raised his eyebrows. "What price can they pay?" Jiao Yen said, "They are willing to pay whatever Zixien paid back then." "I'm afraid they're dreaming." Lu Yi sneered. Back then, they were willing to let Zixien redeem the island because Lu Yi wanted to kill Lionheart. This was one of the conditions of the deal. Secondly, the Three-World Island did not have the confidence to offend a top-grade domain. Moreover, 10 billion spiritual jades was a huge fortune for the Three-World Island. However, that was then and this is now. What was 10 billion spiritual jades? If the Winged Sky planet wanted to redeem a top-grade spiritual island with such a small price, of course Lu Yi would not agree. Moreover, Shen Yun had died at Lu Ye's hands and the Heavenly Luo umbrella had been broken. This enmity had been formed. Even if they had to pay a huge price to redeem the Winged Sky Island, they would be helping the enemy. It was impossible that the previous enmity would disappear just because Lu Yi asked them to redeem the Winged Sky Island. "Senior sister, how is your relationship with the Winged Sky planet?" Lu Yi asked again. Jiao Yen said indifferently, "Someone found me and asked me to pass on a message. Nothing else." "Then I know what to do." Lu Yi nodded. If Jiao Yen interceded, he would be in a difficult position. She was just passing on a message. Of course, he did not care too much. Putting this matter aside, Lu Yi said again, "Senior sister, I have the intention to build a teleportation formation between the 4 top-grade spiritual islands, the Three-World Island, the 10,000 Island, the Purple Jade Island, and the Winged Sky Island. What do you think?" The 10,000 Islands sea was huge. Now that he was in the Sunshine Realm, it was easy for him to travel between the various spiritual islands. However, he did not forget the difficulty of traveling in the 10,000 Island Sea when he was in the Constellation Realm. Often, it would take 10 to 20 days or even longer to travel from one spiritual island to another. However, if there was a teleportation formation, it would be much more convenient. The 4 top-grade spiritual islands were now considered the Three-World Islands property. With a teleportation formation connecting them, it would not only be convenient to travel between them in the future, but if any spiritual island was in trouble, the other 3 islands would also be able to provide assistance. It was not that there were no teleportation formations in the 10,000 Island Sea, but they were basically only connected between spiritual islands that were close to each other. It was not universal. This was because there were advantages and disadvantages to a teleportation formation. If it was used by someone with bad intentions, it could be used directly. Therefore, if the relationship was not close enough, it would not be allowed to build a teleportation formation. "You can make the decision. I have no objections," Jiao Yen replied. In name, she was now the owner of the 10,000 Island. However, she knew the actual situation very well. Lu Yi had asked her to manage the 10,000 Island mainly because of her identity as the 10,000 Island Sunshine. Moreover, she could not refuse the benefits of managing the 10,000 Island. Therefore, both parties were considered to be partners. Now that Lu Yi wanted to build a teleportation formation, how could she have any objections? "Thank you, senior sister." Lu Yi thanked her. "I will arrange this when I return." After chatting with Jiao Yen for a while, Lu Yi bid farewell and left. When he returned to the Three-World Island, Lu Yi found Old Tang and told him about the matter of building a teleportation formation. Old Tang's face immediately turned bitter. "I should have stayed in Jade Conch to retire. Building a teleportation formation was not an easy task. Capable people do more work. Lu Yi comforted him and said, "All right, find some people and spread the news of the battle between Jade Conk and Zixian. Be careful, don't be too deliberate." You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.